Shadow Fox Sparkler. Howdy, chat room. How are we doing today? I hope you're all doing very well. I need to make note of a couple of things because tomorrow I am for sure going to not stream, and during the time that I would normally be streaming, I'm going to do a bunch of back-end stuff that I keep meaning to do and not doing it. So right now, what I am doing is searching my desk desperately for a pen. My search thus far is fruitless. This is horseshit. It sucks a lot. Oh, stop the music. Stop the music. Stop the music. There we go. Hi. Hello, everyone. Hi. You can look at me if you want to. This sucks because I also don't have access to my my keyboard right now. But I need to make note of these things because I will forget. I will forget them. Like, first and foremost is I need to just completely rework stream elements. And then also I need to... Nope, I don't remember. I forgot. This is why I need my pen. So that I could have wrote it down. Could have wrote it down. Dang. There's emails that I need to make. I know that much. I can't believe I can't find a dadgum pen. I can't believe that. I love writing shit down. Like, I love it more than most people should love. Right? Like, I love doing it. I love writing things down. I can type it up and DM you if you need notes. Okay, just as I remember things, I will mention them to you. I would appreciate that very much. Thank you. Oh my goodness, Zarsu SDC. Thank you so much for the follow. I appreciate you very much. Thank you. How are you? Everybody make sure that Zarsu SDC feels welcome. Hi Dragon Rana, how are you? Hi Reaper. Thank you so much. I actually like did makeup and like gave myself a fun updo and stuff today. We also, y'all, we finally got a fucking vape. Do you guys want to see it? We finally got one. So no more smoking weed because now we vaping it. I'm hype because this is it's just a little bit better for you. This is the Riot Verb. Or maybe it's the Verb Riot. I'm not sure which is what. But it's really cool. It's not in here. Oh, it's right here. This is the little pod that comes in it. This is the part I have to remember to unscrew this from the pods after buying them. This is called Peach Dream, I think. We just got the lowest THC, the lowest THC one that we could. But I love the little box because it has storage for everything. Almost 3 a.m. going to the dentist at 9:15. I was to my LASIK prep exam yesterday, going in for the LASIK in 2 weeks. Lots of conflicting feelings. Yo, you're going to be so stoked like a month from now. You're going to be so stoked. Anyway, yeah, I'm pretty hype on this. It's going to be cheaper than weed. It's going to be, The one thing that sucks is it's really easy to get too high, and when I get too high, I get scared. I don't like to be too high. I don't like it at all. I only like to be a little bit high. Golly! I genuinely, it is just bananas that there is not a fucking pen here. That is just bananas. Hi, Quinn. There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that I wanted to make a note of, and I've forgotten fucking all of them. I'm going to try some CBD cookies to see if I can do that instead of weed because I'm trying to stop smoking. Yeah, it's good luck. Good luck. I believe in you. I think you can do it. It's tough, but you've got it in you, I bet. Anyway, I miss dreading. I like dreading. I've been having fun with dreading. We have so many of his to watch that we haven't yet. We might not even be able to get through all of them. You can't see where my cursor is because I am not. There we go. Okay, we've got Sid and Nancy, which is going to be very fun. Lavina Johnson, I've never heard of this. Martin Bryant, never heard. G.I. Joe Glinowich, no idea. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. I'm so sorry if I pronounced it wrong. And then Mark Salling, no idea. I thought that we would start with this one because it's oldest and then we can work our way newer. Is that the Snoop Dogg one? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm so sorry. I just read that. Quinn says that LASIK is the best decision of his life. How long did it take you to recover from it, Quinn? Also, hi, Kool-Aid. How are you? Thank you so much for helping with the bot. You're just the best bot rancher of all time. And I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's nice of you to do the thing. You're back with ice cream. I want ice cream. Can I have some? All right, everyone. Huh? I have no idea what you're talking about, Matt. I'm sorry. I'm sure that that's a hilarious joke that just went over my head. I'm sorry. Like I said, this vape gets me too high. I'm very happy about it though. We finally got enough saved up to get a vape. Now I'm just going to have to adjust to how I need to figure out how big of hits to take and stuff like that. Okay. Chocolate peanut butter overload flavor. Yum. Ugh, yum. I kept using the steroidal drops they gave me for 2 weeks because the doctors told me to, and I'm not an idiot, but I was pretty much back to normal after about 4 days or so. Maybe a little bit longer, but not much, certainly under a week. And the nice part is that you have perfect vision as soon as you sit up from the table. Your eyes are just really itchy for a few days. And you're not allowed to rub them, I imagine. So you just use these little drops they give you. Okay, sick. Okay. Can I get some readies in chat? And we will get this show on the road. My breathing is all fucked up. No bueno. Oh, we got so many readies. Hell yeah. Thank you. Y'all the best. Okay. Oops, I clicked the wrong window. Sorry. I'm going to be a little bit of a mess as I navigate this new vape pen, just so you guys know. All right, here we go.
The year was 2009. The creator and showrunner of Nip Tuck, Ryan Murphy, came to Fox with an idea for a show. The show would be about a group of high school students, all who felt like they were on the outside, looking in some way, shape, or form. They were all connected through one through line, that being that they were all in the high school glee club. Key to the show's premise, Ryan pitched, was that it would be a musical comedy, one where actors could break into song, both diegetically
So this is
and
about
non-diegetically. Glee. Somber moments would be undercut by musical montages, sung by the actor on screen. Triumphs would be followed by highly choreographed dance sequences, and coming off of the continued financial success of the High School Musical series, Ryan thought it would be a no-brainer. Fox, however, thought otherwise. Musical television shows had been done before, and each time they had faltered and failed. Musicals in general caused strong reactions in people, and if they didn't do it right, it would be a huge loss for the network. Ryan had already produced a success for them before, and they wanted to work with him again, but this seemed like a risk that was destined for, at best, obscurity. But Ryan held firm. He knew he could make the show a success, he just needed a plot. He knew if he got his plot in front of the world, they would see how amazing the show could be. Fox relented, but keeping the budget for the show small, trying in earnest to minimize their losses. Because of that, the cast was mostly filled with virtual unknowns, actors still looking for their big break, some of which had performed on Broadway and other arenas, but looking to make their way into the mainstream. Everything was stacked against the show before it premiered. It didn't have any big name appeal to it, and it could easily be written off as
people
too
fucking
campy.
loved
However,
Glee,
on May
though.
19th, 2009,
Hi, Half Matt. How are ya? Good to
debuted,
see ya.
And everything changed. To say the show was a success would be a massive understatement. The show, which had barely been given a plot, had broken records upon their first episode debut. People all over the world were proudly declaring themselves as Gleeks. The show had seemingly captured the hearts of audiences who felt unseen and unheard, and saw themselves in the leads who were trying their best to both fit in and stand out. Fox quickly met with Ryan and greenlit the show for a full season after the first episode premiered, flabbergasted at how it had continued to trend
gamer
on
bar
Twitter
fun.
for days after. The songs from the first episode, likewise, were placed onto iTunes and immediately charted, something that no one had expected. Fans demanded more Glee content, but would have to wait for 6 months before they would be able to see more
I'm
of
hanging
the
in there.
characters they had just begun to
Hacks
love.
Matt, we got a
Despite
bunch
there
of stuff
being a
done
long wait
today,
between
which
the first and second episode,
felt
the Glee
good that
fandom
we've been
continued
meaning to
grow.
get done for
The
a
small
really long
cast was
time.
catapulted into superstardom, something they had in no way been prepared for. It was in that first record-breaking, trending episode that the world at large was introduced to Mark Sailing. Welcome to today's episode of Dreading, brought to you by my patrons. We are, of course, going to be going over the life and crimes
who Mark
of
Sailing
Mark
is.
Sailing. If you have any other suggestions in
I have
terms
no
of video
idea who that
topics you would
is.
like
Who
me to
was he
cover,
on the
feel
show?
free to
Does
leave them
anybody
in the comments
know?
below or email me. Also, remember to like and subscribe. But with that said, let us begin. Mark was born in Dallas, Texas, to his parents, Condi Sue and Robert Sailing, Jr. His parents were incredibly religious, and fearing the public school system, they made the decision to homeschool Mark. His father was an accountant and his mother was a high school secretary, but they wanted to make sure he had a well-rounded education that included emphasis on the arts, and opted to put him in music classes when he was just 5. It was there that he learned to play piano and guitar and quickly found a passion for music. He began to write songs at the age of 6 and would often force his family to sit down and watch him perform his own songs. From that point on, Mark was adamant that he would be a performer. It wasn't long until Condi Sue, who had taken the bulk of his homeschooling on, realized that Mark had too much energy for her alone to contain. He was a bit of a troublemaker with a proclivity to daydream, and she didn't know how to
this is
fully
some
keep his focus.
true
They
crime.
then made a decision to put him into school.
This is
sending him
about
first to Providence Christian School
some
in
dude
Dallas,
named
Texas.
Mark
Shortly
from
after,
Glee.
Mark
I don't
transferred to a new
remember
school, Our Redeemer
him.
Lutheran,
Yeah, I only
where he
watched the
stayed
first
until
like
his
2
eighth grade
seasons, and then I was like,
graduation.
okay, I
Throughout
get
this
it.
time, Mark
Mashups
made
or
it
whatever.
clear to all of his teachers and classmates that he was going to be famous. He would often break out into song and put on skits for his classmates,
dang it, I keep doing
sometimes
that.
in the middle of a lesson. Much to his teachers' chagrin, he was the class clown and loved making the people around him smile. And if you were to ask him, and he did it all to let the people around him know that one day
Puck.
he would be famous. Because of his insistence,
That's the guy that
Condi
was
Sue
like
and
the
Robert
bad guy
decided
at
they would
first,
let
right?
Mark
He was
pursue
like
acting,
the
but only if it didn't
antagonist.
get in the way of his schoolwork, which Mark readily agreed to. At the age of 14, he got his first acting role in the movie Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering, starring Naomi Watts.
From the world of Stephen King comes the darkest mystery of the year. You and I both know there's nothing to be afraid of, right?
I'm not afraid of anything.
Of an evil set upon a small Midwestern town.
Grace, I'm hot.
It did something to him. The fever.
And a young medical student who must solve its mysteries.
Whatever happened to my boy is going to happen to him.
Now, the secret of the force behind the terror will be revealed.
Good golly.
I've come for the children.
Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering.
I liked the Children of the Corn series. They could get me scared when I was younger.
Favorite food, pistachio ice cream.
Lovely.
They could.
Great guitar player. Could have been a rock star.
They could. They didn't have to.
Got all 30 of them.
They
Who says kids
could.
don't have heroes anymore?
Grace, how are you going to stay?
I'll stay till Mom's feeling better.
They should just throw in the cracker factory and call it a day.
James.
Mark hoped that this would be his big break, and that he would be the next Macaulay Culkin, but that wasn't the case. The film didn't make waves at the box office, and one of the most positive reviews called it a marginally better effort than Part 3, while another stating that it was highly derivative without any
No,
sense of
Careless
wit or
Binky,
irony.
I
But
don't.
No one seemed to tell Mark that the
I
movie
haven't seen
didn't
all.
do
I
well.
feel like I
After
saw
his
1
time
and 2,
on
and
set
like,
for his
and they
first
were like
movie,
fun.
Mark had begun acting out. He felt as if he was on the track to be a movie star and started to neglect his studies and behave disrespectfully to his parents. When pushed to behave in class, Mark would respond that he didn't need whatever it was that they were trying to teach him because he was too famous and would be leaving for Hollywood any day. His parents were at a loss, telling him he could no longer go on auditions and that they weren't going to allow him to pursue acting. But that did little to quell him. In order to put a stopper on his negative behavior, his parents enrolled him in Culver Military Academy, a boarding school in Indiana. What happened to Mark at Culver Military Academy that caused him to change so profoundly is something that he seemingly never discussed with anyone publicly or privately. Ex-girlfriends who came forward after his fame would discuss how he became an incredibly guarded and private person, but ultimately no one truly could pinpoint why. While a former vocal coach would come forward and state outright that he believed Mark was a victim of abuse himself, though nothing has ever been confirmed. It should be noted, though, that during the research portion of this video, we did happen upon a case of a former colonel who worked at Culver Military Academy, who was found with 2 laptops containing thousands of images of child pornography, which was almost identical to what Mark would be found with years later. Based on the minimal information we have available to us, it's impossible to state whether Mark even came into contact with this person. However, it is not uncommon for boarding schools like Culver Academy to be hotbeds for predators looking to take advantage of vulnerable people. When children and teens are sent to boarding schools, youth camps, or retreats that focus on disciplining the youth, they are put in an environment where they are not trusted or believed. Predators often seek out employment at places like this in order to not only have access to minors, but because the system is ultimately set up in a way where even if a child were to speak out about being abused by a staff member, they would be written off as lying. To be clear, no proof exists that I was able to find that states Mark ever met this person who was caught with one of the biggest stashes of child pornography in the history of the state. But given his profound and radical shift from a happy-go-lucky class clown with a slight ego problem to an aloof, withdrawn person whose girlfriends would state they were battling with their own personal demons, it is clear that something happened at Culver that caused Mark to change abruptly.
You
And
can
given
tell
his
me when
later
you can't
crimes,
see.
Many believe he was mirroring what he saw while there at best.
Urban
or mirroring
Harvest.
what had been
Holy
done
shit.
to him. After a short
That's
while,
hilarious.
his parents saw progress in his behavior, so Mark was able to transfer to Lake Highlands High School. They also allowed him to once again pursue some acting on the side, and he was cast in one episode of Walker, Texas Ranger with Chuck Norris. 2 years after, he graduated in 2001, at the age of 19. Shortly after graduating, Mark once again set his sights on the entertainment industry
Maybe
and
I
moved
should
to
do
Pasadena, California, right outside of
Children
LA
of
in
the
order to
Corn
attend the Los Angeles Music Academy
marathon.
College. While he was technically attending college,
That'd
it
be
seemed that he
fun.
still felt the same way he had in his youth. Being that while school was well and good for other people, he didn't necessarily need it because he was going to be so famous. He began to go on auditions, hoping to be the next big thing. He felt that his resume and his abilities spoke for themselves at first, proud that he had booked an entire movie when he was just 14. But he quickly became aware that while he had gone to high school, a lot of other actors his age had been networking and making a name for themselves. Agents didn't seem to be too impressed that he'd been in a movie 10 years ago, and no one knew who he was now. It would be years before Hollywood would cast Mark in any projects, with him booking only one named role in a direct-to-video horror movie called Graveyard in 2006. But Mark wasn't picky. He didn't care how he would get famous, or from what. He just wanted to be famous. As he continued to go on auditions,
Versus
he started
Leprechaun in the
producing
Hood.
music
Oof.
under the name Jericho. He then put out an entirely self-produced, self-made album called Smoke Signals, and hoped once again it would lead to more mainstream success. He tried to market his music on MySpace and made it a point to go to various local open mic nights and coffee shops with the hopes that some producer would hear him and be blown away. But it seemed the more he pushed, the less people cared. After nothing but doors closing in his face, one day, like fate, Mark ended up getting the audition for a show that seemed custom made for him, and for the first time in years, landed a role. There isn't a word in the English vocabulary to surmise what a cultural juggernaut Glee was. Many of the main cast has likened the success to a drug and described their rise to fame as quick and turbulent. They were thrown from relative obscurity into the limelight with no preparation, and were quickly inundated with love and support from the public, namely young teens who saw themselves in the characters of the show. Many
Glee
of the
was
cast, including
huge
Mark,
for
were
the
still working normal jobs
LGBTQ
when it
crowd,
premiered,
hey?
but quickly realized being out and about was no longer possible for them, as they were repeatedly swarmed by hordes of fans and onlookers. Fans flocked to the stars' Twitters, writing them love notes, telling them that in one episode they had changed the course of their lives and more. And as the resident eyeliner-wearing bad boy, Mark became one of television's most desirable leading men. And Mark, for one, loved the attention. So much so that despite having a 2-year-long relationship with his co-star Naya Rivera that was incredibly serious, he would publicly state time and time again in the press that he was single. Naya would describe in her book, Sorry Not Sorry, that this was a choice he said was made by his manager, because his fans, mostly young girls, would be less interested in him if he were attached, and not an eligible young bachelor
thought the people
that they saw
sucked at
themselves
singing?
having
I
a
didn't think
chance
they were
with.
bad.
It wasn't important to him, he told her, but the thousands of young teenage girls who idolized him wouldn't like him as much if he was dating someone else, and would be less likely to support him professionally. In the same book, Naya would go on to posit that the reality of the situation was that he wanted to continue to sleep with other people, including those young fans, and she was simply getting in the way of that. She also stated that his later crimes were not shocking to her in the slightest, but it wasn't just acting success. Because Glee was a musical show, music that Mark was featured on was being listened to and downloaded by the millions, with his first solo on the show, Sweet Caroline, hitting the Billboard's Top 100. Every aspect of his dreams were coming true. He quickly decided to put out an album, this under his own name. He hoped that his success on the show would lead to even more eyes and ears on his album, with him going so far as to say in an interview with Teen Vogue that his dream would be to have his own music featured on the show. However, that never came to be, and his album failed to make an impact, with even diehard fans of the show not knowing about its release. Still, Mark was the most successful he'd ever been. Because of this widespread fan reaction to Glee, the network made the decision to fund a nationwide arena tour, with every member of the talented cast slated to join and perform live. This was exactly what Mark had been waiting for to happen, and it seemed that nothing could go wrong. But all good things must come to an end. While the success of Glee and the actors who appeared on it was rapid, the downfall was slow and painful. People fell out of love gradually over time, and this included the actors. As is the case with most popular shows, the actors become too likened to their characters. Amber Riley was Mercedes, Chris Colfer was Kurt, and Mark Salling was Puck. The fans had a hard time differentiating between them. Mark hadn't taken on any other significant roles during this time on the show, and so people only saw him as that character, which made him all the less employable. Mark had gone so far as to turn down roles early in the show's tenure, thinking like he had when he was younger, that he was famous enough that eventually more parts would be brought to him. that Glee and the subsequent tours were just a stepping stone to further fame and fortune. He was once again proven wrong. As time went on and the show was more heavily criticized, opportunities stopped coming. His manager stopped getting calls requesting him, and he realized that he had made a big mistake. Eventually, when Mark's role was cut down from a main cast member to a recurring guest appearance, he began to go out on more auditions, where the only role he was able to book was the lead in the made-for-TV movie Rocky Road.
Mr. Price, is that a new suit?
Sit down, Harrison. The merger didn't go through. We have to downsize. The car, the apartment, and it pains me to say this, your job.
Mr. Hines, I am available. Position's been filled. All right. Jonathan, hey, it's me, your brother. I was just wondering if I could crash on your couch. Okay, I'll just head to a hotel. All right. Hey, Mom.
Harry!
Look who's here. Are you staying at the hotel again?
Actually, I thought I'd stay here for a couple days, maybe a week.
So how's biz?
You know, if you just stayed here with the ice cream business, we could be Ben and Harry.
Guys, please excuse me for a minute. I have phone calls to make.
Susie!
Harry? I'm glad you're here, Harry.
Really?
This looks awful. I'm sorry. I am not interested in this even
Should've done
remotely.
this weeks ago.
Harry, one sec. I'm in the power.
Hi, Clara.
So are we.
So you're living here?
I wouldn't call it living.
Okay, this is the key to the truck that sells ice cream. If you're gonna be living here, you're gonna be jingling that bell.
Not the paper hat.
Hey, kids, who wants ice cream?
I'm not supposed to talk to strangers.
I'm not a stranger. I grew up here.
If you grew up, then why are you wearing the paper hat?
Okay, that was kind of funny.
Lose, you lose, old timer.
Can they kiss?
What do you think?
The change in roles and the slow decaying fame was said to take a toll on Mark, who was already described as a dark, morose person who was already struggling with his own demons. But it would only get worse from here.
I'm nothing like Puck on Glee. I'm worse.
Guy, but in real life, I'm the worst guy.
In January of 2013, one of Mark Saling's ex-girlfriends, Roxanne Gorzella, accused him of committing sexual battery on her during their relationship. She stated that he had tricked her into having unprotected sex with him by putting condoms on in front of her, then quickly taking them off in an act that is formally known as stealthing.
That's
Roxanne
gross.
knew that he had been cheating on her with other women and had a tendency to sleep with his fans when on the road, and worried that he had potentially given her an STD. She asked him to come with her to get tested to make sure they were both clean, but he stopped responding to her texts and calls. Panicked and angry,
That's so
Roxanne then went
fucked
to Mark's
up.
house to try to get him to go with her to get tested. She ended up finding him in bed with another woman, again not using a condom. It was then when he grabbed her by the arms and pushed her down to the ground, where she hit her head. That same day, she went to the police and filed a report for the assault, and they took photos of her injuries. At the time, Mark's role on Glee was being actively sized down, and he had begun to struggle with getting acting roles. However, when the news of the lawsuit broke, he tried to play it off as being defamatory and false.
Can you imagine how awkward it would be to be that fan? It was just like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm fucking Puck.
One of his reps also gave a statement to TMZ.
His
saying
girlfriend?
that the lawsuit was a
Question mark?
quote-unquote textbook
Is
case
here?
of a disgruntled girl looking to cash
Question
in
mark?
on a TV star's success. Multiple other statements like that came out, with supposedly anonymous friends of Gorzella
Holy shit,
telling
Matt, I
TMZ,
hadn't even
Yahoo
considered
News,
that.
and other publications that they knew Mark,
Ouch.
and he'd never touched Roxanne in anger. And she had become obsessed with him since they stopped sleeping together. More still claimed to have witnessed this incident and said Roxanne was the aggressor, breaking down his door and forcing him to strike her. Oddly enough, none of these eyewitness reports ever made themselves known. Their statements went against the police reports that were taken the same day, and when Mark did respond in court, none of their claims were ever mentioned. Despite his outright denial and statements about suing Gorzella, Mark ended up settling the lawsuit, having to pay her $2.7 million. And though he firmly denied any part of her claims, it was clear that Gorzella could back up what she was saying with text messages, emails, photos,
But
and
there's
the police report.
7.
The lawsuit marked a downward spiral for Mark. Again, his part on Glee had been massively cut back, and he wasn't booking anything that he had been auditioning for. Finally, in 2015, directly
because
after
I
Glee
accidentally
wrapped,
did
he
7 on
landed
the
a lead
last
role
row.
in a movie called Gods and Secrets.
That's okay, because
alongside
this is
Denise
not even a
Richards
mistake.
and
Like,
Jane
this is
Seymour.
so
Mark stated
fixable.
that this would have been his big comeback, and it just might have been. until Mark was caught with thousands of images and videos of child porn. A separate, still unidentified ex-girlfriend had spoken to the LAPD about her suspicion that Mark had child porn in his possession. She stated that she personally believed that he had sexual images of minors on various electronic devices, and that he was a danger to children based on the things he told her during their relationship. When they had last gotten intimate, he had asked if she wanted to watch child porn with him, to which she said no. He then tried to play it off as a joke, but she was disturbed. He had tried to speak with her afterwards to explain that he was just kidding. He didn't actually own any child.
Hi, Catalin. How are you?
She felt strongly enough that day she went and made a police report. The LAPD took her claims seriously and worked for 2 weeks to corroborate her story, making sure
Did
that
this
she
guy
wasn't
actually
a
get
spurned
fucking
lover trying to get
caught
revenge.
with
December
child
29th,
porn?
2015, cops raided Saling's home, retrieved every electronic device, and arrested the 33-year-old. According to Crime Watch Daily, who worked with the LAPD to break the story, Saling's door had to be broken down because he refused to let the police serve the warrant and tried to keep them out of his home. It seemed that he had a vague idea as to why they were there and what they were looking for.
Right,
as
Matt?
he tried to
I
get rid of
agree.
some of his electronics. However, the
What
police were
had
able
they
to break
been
down the
telling
door and
jokes
stop him
about
from
that
destroying
night?
anything. Before being taken away, the cops asked Saling for his passwords, specifically to the one laptop and one phone, but Saling refused them access. The raid was meticulously planned, and the cops had brought experts in to unlock his electronics even without his compliance. As he was transported to jail, the police set up a large trailer in front of his house, where they reviewed the contents of every laptop, cell phone, and thumb drive in his home, and unfortunately found over 50,000 videos and images of child exploitative material, most of which involved children between the ages of 3 and 5 being sexually assaulted in various ways. Mark was extremely organized when it came to his porn,
My
with images
God.
and videos categorized by name and age, with the youngest being 2 years old. One of the officers who had to process the evidence recalled that the images and videos Mark had on his computer was some of the worst he had ever seen, and he had been working in child sex crimes for over a decade at that point. According to court documents, all the offending material involved children who were no older than 6 years old, and one of the files Mark had was titled Jazz's Guide, and it was a manual on how to assault and sexually abuse little girls between the ages of 3 to 6. These images were also found on every single one of his devices, including a thumb drive, a separate computer, and his phone, meaning that he had multiple points of access, and that any defense that tried to say that these images were planted on him by another party was incredibly far-fetched. After Saling had been arrested, another one of his sexual paramours came forward privately to the police and stated that Saling had also tried to get her to watch the videos with him while they were having sex, which corroborated the other ex's story. She, however, didn't know how serious he was. She described talking to him afterwards and how he had convinced her that he had been kidding and she couldn't take a joke. With his insistence, she decided not to bring the issue up to the police, but stopped talking to him altogether. After he was arrested, Mark immediately bailed himself out the same day and tried to appear as if everything was normal in his life. He continued to be spotted going out to bars, getting groceries, and working out, most likely at the behest of his management, who told him to act as if nothing was wrong. He denied the claims and seemed to be in good spirits. The director of his latest movie tweeted out that he would wait to see if Mark was actually charged and indicted with any crimes, as he didn't want to cave to cancel culture until he got all the facts. Other ex-girlfriends of Mark later came forward in the media and discussed how he would regularly cheat on them, usually choosing to keep women around him who were freshly 18 or seemed to look younger, and knowingly spread STDs to them through his refusal to wear condoms. On more than one occasion, he would ask his girlfriends to wear children's clothing and dress younger during sex. In one instance, one of his exes stated that she thought he liked the clothes because they were small on her, never realizing he liked them because they made her look like a child. He would also express anger towards them if they considered altering their bodies in any way that made them look more adult. Naya Rivera and another one of his exes both spoke about how he chilled to them romantically after they got boob jobs. A separate ex talked about how, at the height of his fame from Glee, he made it very clear to her that it didn't matter what she wanted in the relationship, because he had a bevy of other women waiting in the wings. He then proceeded to show her pictures of all the girls who were in his DMs, and she was shocked to see how young some of them were. but she thought better of him. She thought he wasn't serious about sleeping with any of the girls he had shown her, but wanted to
That's
impart on her
disgusting
that he was
behavior,
a
even
heavily
if you're
sought-after
not a
guy,
fucking
and he could leave her
pedophile.
if he wanted to. Unfortunately,
Like, just
he meant
what a
both. With the
dick.
research and the intense
God.
investigation into Mark,
This
the
is
police
making me
were
feel kind of
100%
sick.
certain that they would find child exploitative material in his home before they even searched it. And while the reason has never been given, in his indictment, the grand jury charges that, on or about December 26, 2015, 4 days before his arrest, he received a MacBook Air that contained images of child pornography on them, and that 3 days after, he received a thumb drive that had multiple pedophilic videos on them. From what is publicly available, it appears that these packages were tracked with an idea of what was in them, and that Mark receiving these was all the confirmation they needed. Much like the Josh Duggar case, Josh used the dark web with a Tor browser and electronically shook hands with an undercover officer. It is widely believed that at some point while trying to get hold of child porn, Mark made contact with an undercover agent who then was made aware of the purchasing of the laptop.
Good
and
night,
thumb
Reaper.
drive.
Have a
At
good
this
one.
point,
Thanks for
they had
hanging out.
confirmed he had in fact received it, and they moved in. In June of 2016, a full year after being arrested, Mark pleaded not guilty. However, the judges ruled that due to the charges against him, he was to stay 100 feet away from all schools, parks, arcades, and other places of the sort. He was also informed that he was no longer legally allowed to be alone with any minor, would have to turn in his passport to prevent fleeing the country, and he would be required to wear a GPS monitoring device at all times, so the authorities would know where he was. Shortly after surrendering his passport and getting the ankle monitor, Mark made an attempt on his life. While in the bathroom of his home, he slit both of his wrists, then promptly began to freak out and screamed for his roommate to help him. When his roommate saw what he had done, he made this 911 call.
Correct.
Okay, is that a house, apartment, or business?
House.
Okay, and you're right by Wine?
Correct.
Okay, so you're calling one, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the emergency? Three? Okay. The patient right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, about how old is the patient? Fine, just approximate. And then you said you are with them. Are they awake right now? And are they alert where they can answer your questions correctly and appropriately? Okay, good. And then you said...
Sure.
Okay. And,
yeah. Yes.
Okay. We do have the paramedics responding. Okay, we're going to be there, sure. Okay?
Okay.
We're going to be there shortly.
Okay.
Now watch the patient closely. If they become... Unlock your front
Sorry, I have to
door
do
and
some
be looking
untangling
outward.
here.
Just wave us down when you see
Shouldn't
us,
take
okay?
too much longer.
Okay.
And if anything changes where they get worse before we get there, call us back. Okay, we're on our way. We'll be there shortly.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable hanging up the phone?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, good. Everything's...
Sir, do you know how long that they're going to take?
They're about a mile out, so they're going to go with lights and sirens. I'm going to say 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, great.
Okay, and it is no. Okay, we're on our way. We'll be there shortly. Light gun the fire department when you see us. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay.
The paramedics rushed him to the hospital where they were able to treat him with no issue. However, because of the attempt on his own life, Mark was given a psychiatric evaluation, which he ultimately failed. He was kept in the hospital for a couple days after that, until it was decided that he would enter a rehab facility that specializes in psychological issues. News of this attempt on his own life wouldn't come to light until months later, when Mark took a plea bargain. In exchange for pleading guilty on 2 accounts of owning child pornography, the district attorney lessened Mark's potential sentence from 20 years in prison to 4 to 7, with 20 years supervised release. He also agreed to paying $50,000 restitution to each of the victims, that being the children in the images he owned. Mark had been willing, originally, to work with the district attorney and plead guilty to a lesser charge. However, he was adamant that he didn't want to do any time in jail. The DA told him that wasn't an option, and there was no version of reality that would keep him out of jail, as he had been caught with one of the most graphic collections of child porn in history. Giving him a slap on the wrist and probation was not an option. Mark truly didn't seem to believe them. He fired multiple of his attorneys after they stated that the deal he was being offered of 4 to 7 years in prison and 20 years probation was the best they were going to get. It seemed that Mark viewed going to prison as a fate worse than death, and when he did eventually sign a plea deal, pleading guilty to owning thousands of images of child porn, he ultimately signed his death certificate. Just a month after he pled guilty, barely 5 months after his last attempt on his life, and leaving rehab before he could be properly sentenced, Mark Salling, at the age of 35, committed suicide by hanging. Mark had walked to a riverbed that was across from a Little League field he had previously liked to frequent when he was allowed 100 feet from the park. When the police found him, he had been dead for quite some time and left a note. It was also found that he had been drunk at the time of his death and had taken his ankle monitor off, which was what originally raised flags with the police. Mark's death would be his final self-serving action. His victims, his family, and his fans would never know why he did what he did, and would never get any sort of resolution. It's hard to wrap this case up, as it feels so open-ended, but with Mark's death, his legacy died with him. If you got to this point in the video, please feel free to like and subscribe.
So both him and the like
to see us cover. And for more content,
good boy
check out our
guy
Thank you for watching, and remember,
are
stay
dead.
safe.
That's crazy. Glee was cursed, hey? We're gonna take a quick break. I have to pee really bad. I'm so sorry. Everybody hang tight. We'll be back in 3 to 5 minutes. Hello. How's it going? Just gonna pause that and we can just get right back into it. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I had a couple bites of oats while I was downstairs. Overnight oats. If y'all ain't on that shit, it's dessert, but healthy. It's so good. It's crazy. I cannot believe that more people don't do that. I bet it's so good frozen. I bet it's so fucking good frozen. I want to try that now. Anyway, hi. Can I get 3 readies in chat? Nice. Also, I will navigate to the next one. Let's go back to the videos. So yeah, the next one is this G.I. Joe one. I don't know why it says that it's all the way watched, because we definitely have not watched that. We watched this guy. It was sickening. Ugh. I love when he does these mega episodes. He's my favorite one to watch the long episodes from.
Honor and shame.
Whoops. Yeah, don't let your dreams be memes. Also, just be nice to Doxy maybe and say that you're ready so that I can continue to work on untangling this crazy ball. You're so cute. Oh my God. You guys, Monster is so cute. Hi, bud. Are you coming to hang out? Sweet boy. I can't tell if he was going to jump up or not. Thank you. All right, let's do this.
Most believe they are two sides of the same coin, seeing as both can cause a man or woman to act out of their nature. To seem honorable and noble to others, one might lay down their life, put themselves in the line of fire, and purposely endanger themselves to help their fellow man.
Nice,
they
very.
put everyone else in front of themselves and their needs, wanting for little. And
I
asking
appreciate
for nothing,
that reference
or at
very
least
much.
That's what they allow themselves to outwardly show. The euphoria and pride one feels as being seen as honorable and purely good is unmeasured. There is a true sense of accomplishment and infallibility that comes along with it, as everyone sees you as simply good and seemingly overlooks your more negative attributes. They wouldn't do that. They're a nice person. It is a sentiment that often follows any complaint or issue spoken about them. Things that would be red flags or cause for concern in others are hand-waved. Because you are such a good and honorable person, the very idea of you having a negative quality is ridiculous. It's a minuscule and slight power, but it's power all the same. To continue to seem honorable to their peers and have that power of influence over others, that same person might do unsavory and incredibly dishonorable things. Any personal failing could be placed onto
Okay, don't
another,
laugh at me if I
effectively
choke
framing
on this.
someone else for a mistake, uncaring of what the consequence
I need
to
a little
that person
courage
might be.
before I
Lying,
get to
cheating,
work on
stealing, all
unwinding
done to
this
continue
ball
to
of
appear
knot.
as a good person are not entirely unheard of. In fact, that is the case more often than not. Those mistakes and small errors that they
My
placed onto
kid
others or hidden out of
good.
fear
Thanks for
would slowly but
asking.
surely snowball into massive lies and secrets that threaten one's entire reputation and public appearance. What started out as a small lie can quickly transform into such a damning scandal that if found out, all would
Damning
seemingly be
Scandal is my
lost.
band
The
name.
want to continue to appear honorable turns into the want to hide one's shameful and disgraceful actions, and likewise can cause someone to do the unimaginable. And that certainly is the case today. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading. Today we are going to talk about the case of G.I. Joe Glenowitz, a man who was so addicted to being seen as honorable and people thinking the best of him that he did the unthinkable. This topic was suggested by one of our subscribers.
Did he kill somebody
Jackie
to
Marina.
look
If there is a
good?
case you would like us to cover, please feel free to leave it in the comments.
Because that
below.
shit
And
is
if you
silly.
like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. With all that said,
Did he kill
let's
somebody
begin.
to prevent a
Joe
secret from
Glenowitz
coming
was
out?
the man that everyone seemed to know, even though they could never put a finger on how they met. Joe was just that guy who it seemed like everyone gravitated towards, and everyone had a story about. He was boisterous,
Excuse me?
always the loudest one in the room, and always had some opinion that he just needed to tell you about. More than that,
There's
he
not
was
a
the
lot that's
guy who would drop
unthinkable,
everything
yeah.
to help someone, whether that meant moving into a new home, helping finance a new car, whatever
Some of
was
the
asked
stuff
of
we've
Joe,
seen on
he
this
did it.
channel, dude.
Going out to eat was always annoying, his family members would state, because no matter where they went, there was always someone there that knew their dad and wanted to talk to him, or regaled the whole table with a story about how their dad had affected their life. In the town of Fox Lake, Illinois, he was a local celebrity, who everyone called G.I. Joe. Joe had garnered this nickname early in his life, as he decided at a very young age that he would dedicate his life to protecting the United States. He had a fierce patriotism in him, one that he felt made it his duty to protect the nation and the people he loved so dearly. He attended the Marmion Military Academy, and after graduating
He sounds
from
like a
Antioch
chud.
Community High School in 1981, enlisted into the United States Army, where he felt that he truly belonged. Joe took to the military like a fish to water, and immersed himself in everything he could. He trained as a military police officer, a drill sergeant, and a sniper, wanting to be a jack of all trades and make himself as useful to the military as he could. His goal was to make himself vital to the military, that if there was ever a promotion, he would be seen as the obvious candidate.
There we go.
He never said no to a challenge or task, and was always up for learning something new. Joe stayed an active member of the Army for 4 years, constantly raising the bar for himself and
This
training,
portion
until
right here is the
1985,
reason
when he
that
decided
the
to instead pursue a
innards
position
of
in law enforcement while staying in
our
the Army Reserve.
skin
It was then when
is
Joe joined
a
the Fox
hot
Lakes
mess.
Police
This
Department
is
in Fox Lake,
the
Illinois.
damage that I
The town
did by
itself was
pulling.
incredibly small, with a total population at the time coming in around 10,000 people who had chosen to purposely
Or
settle
this
in a
is
small
what
town
made me
60
do the
miles
damage
outside
that's
of
in our
Chicago.
skin
And much like
from
with
pulling.
everything else Joe had done, he made it his mission to learn
Kind of
everything
both,
he could
honestly.
and make himself indispensable to the team he was on. Though he was originally assigned to be just a patrol officer, he made it
This
a
is
point
where
within
the
his first
snowball
year to get
begun. We'll
certifications
put it
in
that
SWAT,
way.
in police dog handling, and to become a certified
I need to get
evidence
through all of
technician.
this
His
tonight.
superiors saw his potential.
Either
and
that or I
admired
will
his
need
clear
to
drive
like
to
be
the best
very careful to
policeman that he
wrap
could.
some of
And
this
within
up
1
towards the
year's
end.
time,
But I think we
he was
might be able to
promoted to
get through it
sergeant.
all.
At the same time, Joe had met
Which would be
Melody
sick.
Resetter, and the pair had quickly fallen in love, getting married in 1989. The pair would go on to have 4 children, Donald, David, Jeffrey, and Joseph, all of which revered their dad as their hero and role model. As his kids continued to grow, he wanted to foster their love of law enforcement, and what he did. He pursued the lead position of the Fox Lake Police Explorer program. The Fox Lake Police Explorers served as an after-school program that would train young teens who were interested in careers in law enforcement. According to exploring.org, the program offers young adults a personal awareness of the criminal justice system through training, practical experiences, competition, and other activities. Additionally, the program promotes
Hell yeah, I think
personal
we're
growth
gonna be able
through
to get
character
through this shit.
development, respect for the rule of law, physical
is hype.
fitness,
Okay.
good citizenship, and patriotism. The training would often include staging crime scenes, participating in basic training programs, and ride-alongs with actual officers of the law. It was in this position that Joe seemed to really make an impact on the community, becoming a figurehead to many of the teens in the area. He garnered a reputation for being tough but fair, respecting the teens put in his care in a way that they often felt like no other adult did. He would listen to them without judgment and genuinely seemed to have their best interests at heart. From his position as the leader of the Fox Lake Police Explorers, he influenced countless young people into pursuing a military and law enforcement career, including his own son, Donald, who went by the name DJ. After 26 years in the military and 30 years on the police force, Joe had helped countless people and had created a name for himself in the small town. He had started to think about retirement in the next phase of his life. However, everything he had planned would quickly stall on September 1st, 2015. The day started like any other. Joe would set off to work early in the day, stopping at a Quick Mart to buy 2 packs of cigarettes. As he began to drive to the station, he suddenly stopped at an abandoned cement plant. His car and phone seemed to linger here for upwards of 30 minutes, until 7:52 a.m., when Joe radioed into dispatch, stating that he was pursuing 3 men who appeared to be up to something. He described 2 of the men as white and the other as
hanging in
black,
there. How are
and
you?
requested backup to the scene.
Sorry I haven't gotten back to you yet. I will
get
get back to you tonight. Me and Josiah aren't hanging out tonight. I haven't even read your message yet, but I will get back to you tonight.
Down. However, upon their arrival, they heard a distinct gunshot pierce through the area and immediately knew something was deeply amiss. This was an incredibly small, tight-knit town, and to have a shooting, especially an officer-involved shooting, was extremely rare. They searched the area and radioed back to dispatch that shots had been fired, and by 8:09 a.m., just over 10 minutes since he called in for backup, the responding officers found Joe's deceased body lying in the swampy terrain around the plant. It didn't appear that there had been much of a struggle, as most of the terrain remained unmoved. However, Joe's pepper spray and other various belongings had been scattered around the area, indicating that something had caused him to drop them, or he had somehow been disarmed. His radio, taser, and other items were all found within a few feet of where he lay dead. Likewise, his police uniform remained mostly untouched, still tucked in from earlier that morning when he had gotten dressed, without even the slightest sign that he had fought anyone. He had been shot twice, once in the torso, which had been stopped by a cell phone and his bulletproof vest, and a second time in the chest. Though the area he was shot the second time was likewise covered by his vest, it appeared that if someone had pulled up the vest and shot him directly under it, an action that made little sense to those who found the body. Why would anyone go through the effort to pull up his Kevlar vest instead of aiming somewhere he wasn't covered, especially if they knew they were on a time crunch? To most who had experience with crime scene investigations, it made little to no sense, but little thought was given to that, and most of the responding officers and personnel had known Joe personally, and were processing the crime scene while processing intense feelings of grief. Oddly enough, Joe's gun was also missing, leading to a large-scale manhunt for 3 men who were armed, dangerous, and had just killed a local hero. Though Fox Lake was an incredibly small town, they put everything they had into looking for the 3 men who had killed Joe. To them, this action posed as a real, tangible threat to their town.
Monstro, quit it.
Sleep until they found the men who were responsible. Almost immediately, the entire town was urged to stay inside as word spread.
Monstro's
about
on my
what had
lap and he's
happened to
playing with
G.I.
the
Joe.
yarn as I pull it
Schools
up.
were put on lockdown
He's
as
biting
the
at it and
police
stuff.
Other agencies came together to search. Within the hour, they had set up a kill zone, a 2-mile radius from where Joe had been killed, that they searched meticulously, to the point of some officers passing out from heat exhaustion. Helicopters, drones, and planes were flown overhead, searching for 3 men who had taken the life of their fellow officer, and after a day of searching, they caught a break. On September 2nd, a woman by the name of Kristen Kiefer called into the local dispatch to state that she had been approached by 2 men, one black and one white. They wanted to know if she was going out of state and if they could hitch a ride with her. She rebuffed their advances, then they tried to steal her car, at which point she fled on foot. She immediately called the authorities, thinking that these 2 men could possibly be involved with the shooting that had taken place the day before. Quickly,
Can you
most
guys
of the search
see?
effort
Have
was
I been
relocated
off
to that
screen
area,
like this whole
in which Kristen
time?
indicated the almost carjacking had taken place. Officers searched the area, but found nothing, leading to Kiefer eventually admitting that she had made the whole encounter up, wanting to insert herself into the currently active investigation. Despite the police
Wowee, how much of a
stating
narcissist
that
do you
it
have
would
to
best
be?
for everyone to stay home in the midst of the
Fuck.
search, the entire town of Fox Lakes
Fwinter.
to instead
Thank you so much for the follow. I
memorialize the man
appreciate
who
you.
had so deeply impacted the lives of everyone around him. His wife of 26 years, Melody, spoke to the large crowd that had gathered in her husband's honor and tearfully recounted how he had been her hero and rock for
Everybody
their
make
years
sure that
together. Other
Fwinter
members of the
feels
community
welcome.
spoke about Joe, regarding him as a true hero and a figurehead in their small town. Many focused on how Joe had begun to discuss retirement. And in
Monstro.
fact, September 1st
Kitty,
had been the
kitty.
day after he could have retired from the service. They also
Okay,
brought up his
bye,
time
Minky.
volunteering with the Explorers
He's a good boy.
and impacting the lives
He's
of
bad,
countless
but he's a good
children
boy.
in the area. But Joe's death didn't just impact the small town of Fox Lake. Something about how he had died in the line of duty caught the media's attention, and soon his death had taken on a new meaning. On September 3rd, the Chicago Bears dedicated one of their preseason games to his memory, and even more media outlets reported on the death as being a consequence of the war on cops, started by the Black Lives Matter movement. By the time of Joe's funeral, just 6 days after his death, thousands of people were in attendance, including the state's governor. People waved thin blue line and American flags during the 18-mile procession, and when Joe was laid to rest, many stated that he was a national hero.
Oh,
No one
son
could
of
have
a
realized how truly wrong they were. Though it appeared that publicly, law enforcement and the governing bodies who were looking into this thought that Joe was an upstanding, amazing police officer who had done no wrong.
Mini corn dog
almost
and fries. That sounds so
something felt
yummy.
off. They quickly sent his mangled phone out to Quantico, hoping the FBI would be able to salvage the contents.
Oh, shit.
Many of the crime scene investigators who had gone to the cement plant after Joe's murder stated that the scene felt entirely staged. Usually, in deadly altercations, there would be some sign of physical disturbance in the surroundings. The swampy terrain should have been trampled or indicate multiple parties being present. But as it was, it seemed like Joe had been the only one there. Secondly, the gun they had thought was missing was found 3 feet away from Joe's body, indicating that whoever had killed him hadn't thought to disarm him, or at least take the gun for evidence. Thirdly, and seemingly most damning, was the fact that the coroner's report had come out days after the crime, and he had stated publicly that while he was assuming the cause of death was homicide, he couldn't rule out a suicide, an accident, or a homicide. His statements that the death could have been a suicide sent shockwaves through the community. Joe's widow and eldest son stood in stark opposition to this statement, saying that Joe would have never even considered taking his own life and had plans for his future, which most suicidal people wouldn't have made. They likewise went on Crime Watch Daily to admonish the coroner, stating him saying that what happened to Joe was anything other than murder was quote-unquote disrespectful, hurtful, and irresponsible. She also went on to state that President Barack Obama was purposely ignoring her husband's death, even though in similar instances he had called the families of other officers who had died on the job. She likewise implied that her husband's death did have to do with the Black Lives Matter protests, and that was why it was being ignored by the president. However, the investigation was about to take a turn that Melody could not have expected when the FBI returned the contents of Joe's phone, especially since it would end up implicating herself.
Was
And
he a
months after
child
getting
pucker?
acknowledgement from the then president, she would be indicted in crimes linked to his death. Despite having a pristine public image
did she get
and
him
being revered
killed?
by the entire nation after his death, Joe was not the nice, gracious man that everyone stated he was. In fact, it seemed as if the entire town of Fox Lakes had purposely hidden the real Joe after his death, never talking about the multiple
40 count box of mini
he had
corn
made in
dogs
his
since
life.
Sunday. I love mini
Transgressions
corn dogs,
that were
dude.
alarmingly common, and painted the picture not of a military and police
We've been
hero,
eating
but
super,
of a man
super
who
healthy. We
abused
got
his
these
power
like
and thought he was above the
wraps,
law. Whether this
these
was done
spinach
purposely or
wraps, and
not,
we've been
it
making
seemed
these
odd
spinach
that
wrap
directly after
sandwiches
his
for lunch,
passing, he was
having the
praised as an
overnight
amazing
oats,
cop,
and then
when there was
like
plenty of
all
evidence to show he
unprocessed
was
food
anything
for
but.
dinner.
It was
Like
also
yesterday,
made
we had
clear that
stir
his friend,
fry
Chief of
with
Police,
rice.
Michael Ban, had purposely ignored and hand-waved a lot of Joe's actions,
And
both because they were
the
friends
day before
and he
that,
likewise
we
took part in
had
some
just
of Joe's
chicken
less
and
savory
fiddlehead
habits.
ferns
After
and mashed
Joe's death,
potatoes.
his personnel file was released,
I don't know what we're gonna have tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if it was stir fry again, or we also have the stuff for like spaghetti.
Seemed to indicate that he was an amazing policeman. Things quickly took a turn. It seemed that Joe had a tendency to ignore his commitments and opt
Oh
out
yeah,
of
we
his
were talking
duties,
about doing chicken
clocking in
Alfredo,
just
which
to
isn't
hang out
super
and get
healthy,
drunk.
but
He had then
We
been
do it
suspended
with
multiple times for his behavior.
these noodles that
but
are made
seemed
with
not to care
vegetable
at all that
flour,
much, and never
which
really
is
feared
processed
getting
food.
fired.
I'll give you
There were
that.
also 2
That
incidents
is
in which
processed
Joe had been
food,
found
and
by
so
his
is
fellow
the sauce
police
that we put
officers
in it.
passed out drunk in his car with the engine
So I guess
on.
that
In
wouldn't
one
be one of our
instance,
like
after his
healthiest
colleagues were
meals,
able to
but
wake him up and bring him back to his home, they
still,
had his
it's
car
not
towed to a
McDonald's, you
lot.
know.
When Joe had come to, he was unable to recall what had happened the night before after passing out at the wheel, and when he couldn't find his car, reported it as stolen. It was only when one of the responding officers spoke to him that he realized that he had simply blacked out and his car had been impounded. At that point, he was more irritated that the officers
overnight
didn't bring his
oats?
car back to his home than he was
But
embarrassed
okay,
that
I'm
he'd
going
broken
to
the law.
pause.
For Joe,
I'm
he
going to
didn't care
pause.
if his coworkers saw
And I'm going to speak directly to you. I'm about to change your fucking life. Overnight oats are incredible. If you can handle the extra fiber in your diet, if you can eat dairy, then I'm about to change your fucking life. So what you do is you do 1 part oats, 1 part milk, like 2.5 tablespoons of either plain Greek yogurt or vanilla Greek yogurt, and then 1.5 tablespoons or so of either honey or maple syrup. And you let that sit. Well, you shake it up real good. And I like to store it upside down because it tends to sediment a little bit. So you can turn it right side up and shake it up, and that it disperses better. But then anyway, what we've been adding to it is a little bit of peanut butter, a little bit of chocolate sauce, some coconut, and banana, and eating that. It's so good. It lasts for up to 5 days in the fridge, so it'll last you a while. And doing 1 cup and 1 cup, it makes a lot. You lost me a banana, so don't put the fucking bananas in, dude. Like, you can put whatever you want in, but that's just what we've been putting in. Even better than honey or maple is palm sugar. I've never had palm sugar before. I need to start cooking dinners again. You like berries on yours? Yeah. I can imagine that that's very good too. I'm thinking about doing a peanut butter and jelly one because we got this amazing blackberry jelly. And then we also both just really love raspberry jelly. I do want to start experimenting with different sugars and like different flours and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm not going to be putting flour in my overnight oats, but we're starting to bake our own bread. We're starting to get really in control of the things that are going on with our bodies is what is happening. And I'm terribly excited about it. I am really looking forward to baking a bunch of different kinds of bread. But mostly I'm looking forward to feeling full and still like my weight coming down to what is healthy for me. And I know that I don't look super overweight, but I am really dense. I weigh a lot more than you think when you look at me. I need to remember this for when I don't want to cook but want actual breakfast. It's amazing. And you can heat it up if you prefer it hot. I like it cold. I want to start freezing it. And seeing how it does frozen. It's très magnifique. Super. Could you say it again? I missed some of the ingredients. Yeah, absolutely. 9-tailed fox. So what you want to do, in order to make like 3 or 4 servings, you'll do 1 cup of steel cut oats or rolled oats if you prefer. 1 cup of milk. And then you add in like 2 or so tablespoons of either plain Greek yogurt or vanilla Greek yogurt. You want 1.5 tablespoons of either maple syrup or honey, some sort of liquid sweetener. And And then, yeah, you'll put that in a mason jar, store that puppy upside down after mixing it real good, and let it soak overnight. And then you can add whatever kind of sweet stuff you want to it. Like, I think that I'm gonna add a little bit extra vanilla extract next time with almonds and coconuts and have it be like an almond joy. Oh, and put like chocolate chips in there. And it tastes like a sinful dessert that like is bad for you. Like it tastes like you're having an amazing textured ice cream dessert. Like it's so fucking good, but also it's healthy. It's crazy. It can get unhealthy very fast, so you want to watch what you're putting in there. But it's so much better for you than like having cereal or whatever. You know what I mean? If you want it to be extra healthy, you can do water instead of milk and then just mix in yogurt to taste to get the like creaminess for it. But I would not be willing to forgo the milk personally. I'm considering moving to oat milk, but I'm a little bit worried that that's going to be like way too much like oatness. You know what I mean? But I feel like also it would be kind of perfect to use oat milk with, I don't know. Anyway, can I get some readies in chat and we'll go, if I could just get like 4, that would be sick. And we can go back to finding out what's wrong with GI Junkus. Sorry, I just found out that Brett McKenzie from Flight of the Conchords is going on tour. And he's going to be in Montreal in October. And that sounds amazing. I want to go. I want to go to there. Huh. Okay. Ticketmaster is evil. I wanted to compare show prices, but it's whatever. See you later, Fred. Have a good one. Looks like we got the readies that we needed. Apologies. Here we go.
Saw him as a lazy drunk who refused to do his job. He knew he wouldn't be penalized, so he didn't care. But his drunken antics and his habit of ignoring personal responsibilities.
What? I'm sorry, I'm rewinding this?
Though he had been suspended a handful of times for his flagrant tardiness, his death, Joe was not the nice, gracious man that everyone stated he was. In fact, it seemed as if the entire town of Fox Lakes had purposely hidden the real Joe after his death, never talking about the multiple transgressions he had made in his life. Transgressions that were alarmingly common.
Oh my gosh! Can you guys not see this?
Military and police hero, but of a man who abused his power.
Why is this happening?
He was above the law. Whether this was done purposely or not, it seems odd that directly after his passing, he was praised as an amazing cop when there was plenty of evidence to show he was anything but. It was also made clear that his friend, Chief of Police Michael Bayan, had purposely ignored and hand-waved a lot of Joe's actions, both because they were friends and he likewise took part in some of Joe's less savory habits. After Joe's death, his personnel file was released, and all of the things he had done throughout his storied career finally became public. And while the first 50 or so pages seemed to indicate that he was an amazing policeman, things quickly took a turn. It seemed that Joe had a tendency to ignore his commitments and opt out of his duties, clocking in just to hang out and get drunk. He had then been suspended multiple times for his behavior, but seemed not to care at all that much, and never really feared getting fired. There were also 2 incidents in which Joe had been found by his fellow police officers passed out drunk in his car with the engine on. In one instance, after his colleagues were able to wake him up and bring him back to his home, they had his car towed to a lot. When Joe had come to, he was unable to recall what had happened the night before after passing out at the wheel, and when he couldn't find his car, reported it as stolen. It was only when one of the responding officers spoke to him that he realized that he had simply blacked out and his car had been impounded. At that point, he was more irritated that the officers didn't bring his car back to his home than he was embarrassed that he had broken the law. For Joe, he didn't care if his coworkers saw him as a lazy drunk who refused to do his job. He knew he wouldn't be penalized, so he didn't care. But his drunken antics and his habit of ignoring personal responsibilities was just the tip of the iceberg. Though he had been suspended a handful of times for his flagrant tardiness and irresponsible actions, it was his threatening behavior towards his peers and the lack of care by his superiors that struck most who read the file. His behavior and negative actions were so widely known within the department that in 2009, a group of 11 police officers sent a letter to the mayor stating outright that Joe should be fired. It also implied that he had some sort of pull inside the department, which kept him from facing any sort of responsibility for his actions, and no other officer could have gotten away with the things he'd been doing. This is what was said. Mayor Irwin, we, the members of the Fox Lake Police Department, wish to inform you and the village board of certain situations which have occurred and require your attention. All members are doing their job. They are following all rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. However, morale within the department is at an all-time low, and personnel are doing just what they have to. The morale issue is what we would like to address with you. On many occasions, various members of the department have approached Chief
This is about a
Dan
bad
with
cop.
information and complaints about Lieutenant Glenowitz. Some of these complaints could have been violations of state statute. To date, the members of the police department have been disappointed time and time again with Chief Ban's lack of action. The following is a brief history of Joe's behavior. Received 6 5-day suspensions, 30 days in total, for an inappropriate sexual relationship with a subordinate. This officer also sued the department over this, and the village lost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars defending themselves. Received another suspension for damaging part of the records management program within the department. Was accused of sexual harassment and making threats against a dispatcher. Matter was dropped by the dispatcher. Removed police records from the police department, and in a public place conducted reviews of the reports, which included confronting officers about the reports. Observed by department personnel in bars eating pizza while on duty. Observed by department personnel with certain women, not his wife, visiting different establishments within the village. Various members of the department have been approached by bouncers from different establishments and advised that Lieutenant Glenowitz has been escorted from the establishment in a highly intoxicated condition. Did not pay a bar tab at an establishment within the village that was in excess of $300. Various members of the department have been approached by bouncers from certain establishments
we got all the way through
and advised that Lieutenant Glenowitz is becoming a nuisance because he was drinking
row.
in the bar
Okay, now we're gonna
after
start
hours and
working
would
with
not
some
leave.
bobbles,
Took
which
his family
are
on
so
vacation
fun.
to
I love
Wisconsin
bobble
in a
stitch.
squad car. Allowed several civilian vehicles to fill their tanks with
Cluster,
gas at village pumps. Allowed members of the Explorers unsupervised access to the police department. Allowed an Explorer advisor that was arrested for DUI by the department unsupervised access to the department and the incomplete reports of the arrest. Allowed members of the Explorer post to operate department vehicles. Utilizes
See you later, Dragon
department
Rana. Have a good one.
equipment that should be on the road for Explorer training at the expense of officers on duty. Allowed members of the Explorer post to dress themselves in garments bearing police, thereby misidentifying them as police officers. Somehow obtained control over a certificate for a free tattoo that was donated to the department. Used the certificate to obtain a tattoo while on duty, and the time was later charged as vacation or comp day after members approached Chief Ban. On several occasions at different department Christmas parties, inappropriately touched women, grabbed their breasts, and complaints were made to Chief Ban. was found in an intoxicated position in
Sorry,
public
I'm going to rewind
at
this
or
because I wasn't
near
really
an
paying that much
Antioch
attention
bar
to
by the
his
Antioch Police
transgressions.
Department. There are allegations
So
garments
sorry.
bearing police vehicles to fill their tanks with accused of sexual harassment, morale within the department, lack of action. The following is a brief history of Joe's behavior. Received 6 5-day suspensions, 30 days in total, for an inappropriate sexual relationship with a subordinate. This officer also sued the department over this, and the village lost tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars defending themselves. Received another suspension for damaging part of the records management program within the department. Was accused of sexual harassment and making threats against a dispatcher. Matter was dropped by the dispatcher. Removed police records from the police department, and in a public place conducted reviews of the reports, which included confronting officers about the reports. Observed by department personnel in bars eating pizza while on duty. Observed by department personnel with certain women, not his wife, visiting different establishments within the village. Various members of the department have been approached by bouncers from different establishments and advised that Lieutenant Glinowitz has been escorted from the establishment in a highly intoxicated condition. Did not pay a bar tab at an establishment within the village that was in excess of $300. Various members of the department have been approached by bouncers from certain establishments and advised that Lieutenant Glinowitz is becoming a nuisance because he was drinking in the bar after hours and would not leave. Took his family on vacation to Wisconsin in his squad car. Allowed several civilian vehicles to fill their tanks with gas at village pumps. Allowed members of the Explorers unsupervised access to the police department. Allowed an Explorer advisor that was arrested for DUI by the department unsupervised access to the department and the incomplete reports of the arrest. Allowed members of the Explorer post to operate department vehicles. Utilizes department equipment that should be on the road for Explorer training at the expense of officers on duty. Allowed members of the Explorer post to dress themselves in garments bearing police, thereby misidentifying them as police officers. Somehow obtained control over a certificate for a free tattoo that was donated to the department. Used the certificate to obtain a tattoo while on duty, and the time was later charged as vacation or comp day after members approached Chief Bain.
Shit.
On several occasions at different department Christmas parties, inappropriately touched women, grabbed their breasts, and complaints were made to Chief Bain. Was found in an intoxicated position in public at or near an Antioch bar by the Antioch Police Department. There are allegations he was belligerent with officers who found him. On many arrests, the person being arrested has cautioned the officer about continuing arrest because they were personal friends with Joey, Lieutenant Glinowitz, or Mikey, Chief Bain. This is not an all-inclusive list. There are many other instances where Joe's behavior violates the department's rules, regulations, policies, and procedures. However, we feel that these examples will enlighten you. Chief Bain's head-in-the-sand approach to dealing with Joe can no longer
I'm hanging in there. I'm having a
It
pretty
has
decent
destroyed
day.
morale within the department and affected everyone's
Feels
attitude.
good to
It has
not
brought
have a
us
lot to
this
complain about.
extraordinary point of informing you of this matter. It is our sincere
I don't
hope
get to
that you
hang
will
out with
address this
Josiah
matter.
tonight, which
We
is a
can no
bummer.
longer stand by and watch
Because I
Joe
love
violate
him.
rules and
I love
regulations,
to hang out with him.
policies and procedures,
But tonight's
and
the
state
night that
statute,
we're doing
and remain
separate
silent.
stuff.
Our next step to resolve this matter is to bring it to the attention of the media, or see to it that the appropriate investigation agency is involved. During his time on the force, Joe had forced a subordinate into a sexual relationship, stating that it was part of her job and would help her move up in the department. She later sued the department, but due to faulty legal counsel, she wasn't able to go to trial. Likewise, Chief Bain stated that Joe had done all
Wowie
the
zowie.
things that she accused him of, and admitted to all of it. He recommended Joe
Yeah,
go
I
to
did
a
used to
sexual
play game
addiction
with Minx and
counselor
Ritz. Yep.
and have a 30-day paid suspension from the force. Neither of those things actually happened. It was also found that after
This
his
is
death, his desk in the
so
police department had
upsetting.
an unmarked bag of cocaine, seemingly for recreational use on the job. It was apparent with everything mentioned in his file that Joe was not the person that he was made out to be. He had issues that led plenty of parents who had left their children in his care to feel lied to and taken advantage
Look at that.
of.
Look at
Despite
how
the
neat.
personnel file becoming public,
Look how
his widow and
pretty.
eldest son, DJ, continued to fight for him.
I'm so happy
stating
with
just
this.
because he had made some mistakes didn't mean he was a bad person. But then, the contents of his phone were sent to the police from Quantico, and they realized exactly what kind of person Joe was. In the 6,500 pages of text messages that had been deleted from Glenowitz's phone prior to his death, Joe revealed
so
himself to
now
be a man who simply couldn't be told
chain one,
no or challenged in any
chain
significant
two,
way. Prior
single
to his death,
crochet in the
Lake Fox had hired a
second
village
chain.
administrator, Anne Marin. The position of village administrator was a relatively new one, and Anne had been hired to make sure everything was in order. She wanted to check each department and make sure all of the finances were straight and everything was accounted for. However, after checking the Fox Lake Police Explorer program and finding a bevy of items in their possession that seemed out of place,
that all
she
the way
asked
around.
Joe
We're just
to take
doing
inventory of everything that had
1,
been
2,
billed
3,
to
4,
the
5
Explorers
single
program.
crochet.
She had asked other
1, 2, 3,
program
4, 5
directors to
single
do the
crochet.
same. And for her,
So
it was a
on
fairly
and
standard
so
request.
forth.
This
Hi,
provided
Beth.
to be a heavy ask for Joe, as he had spent his entire time
Thanks,
as the
guys.
head of the program
Thank
stealing
you.
from them. He had used the
I'm really
funds
proud
that
of
had been
it.
dedicated for the program to take him and his family on vacation.
I think it
with
looks
his wife's
very nice.
knowledge,
I think
and
that
also to buy
I think
subscriptions
that
to
this shirt
adult
is going to make
websites
somebody
and get his
feel
morning
so
coffees.
cute,
If there
and
was
that
money in the account meant for the youth
will
program he
just
ran, Joe
mean
thought it was
everything
as good
to
as his.
me.
When Anne requested to take a
Like
look at
if
the
this,
books to
if somebody
verify
puts
that
this
everything
on
was
and
above
like
board, she became
it
Joe's
makes them
biggest
feel good
adversary.
about
In a
themselves,
message that was sent to an
I
unnamed
can't.
Fox Lake representative, Joe said, "Between
I
you and
can't
I'm
quite
having a
wast my
great
head
deal of
around
problems
what
with
that
our
would
new
feel
village
like. Just
administrator. I've
fantasizing
had a
about
talk
it
with the
feels
chief,
good.
and he agrees with me. Does the police department
We're still
have
working
to
on
be
the same thing,
sponsor
Carlos
for the
Binky. This is
post?
a big,
I've done
long
some
project.
research, and it's not evident anywhere that a law enforcement
Well, hi, Moss.
organization has to sponsor an LE
Thank you so
post.
much.
In
I
fact,
appreciate
I've seen
that.
3 at competitions that were sponsored by other entities, and even an FC. Thoughts?
1,
He followed that up
2.
with a text that said, "Yes, I'm working through that issue today and through the weekend. We have a new village administrator that is a power monger and is trying to control everything in the village. We are all looking at our PD retirement options, and I need to move out of that span on control, at least till this person's contract is up." Again, at this point, all that was asked of Joe was that he take inventory of his purchases using the money that was intended for the Explorer post. To him, though, Anne was a power-hungry woman
1,
who wanted to make him personally
2.
suffer. Melody seemed to agree with her husband as to Anne's evil character, and felt as if the money that the pair had spent was indeed their own, as seen in this
5,
conversation.
6,
Melody's identity was kept private originally,
7,
which is why she is referred to
8,
as individual number 1, but in her
9.
own later trial, she was publicly named. Joe says, "I talked to him again and now thinks this is a knee-jerk reaction, and that when we put in our 2 weeks or set a retirement date, then he will move it." Melody responds, "OMFG, and in the meantime, she can do what she wants fucking A. Maybe seeing as we are on 503C, she can't touch the money, and maybe a letter on file from Bayan stating
7,
all is our and the PD
8.
and village have no claim." Joe then replies, "Nope, as long as we are sponsored by the PD, and after she makes the village structure change, she will have the means and ability to do as she wishes." Melody then asks, does he understand that? And maybe we need to hide the funds somehow. But Melody wasn't the only person of the Glenowitz family that seemed to be aware of Joe's spending and partaking in it, as his eldest son DJ, the one who had gone on True Crime Daily with his mother to lie about his father, was also
Cooking
shown
fish
to
sticks,
have
yum,
spoken
yum.
to his father about misappropriating funds, as well as used some of the money himself. In a text conversation he had with his son, Joe once again spoke ill of Anne, writing, "She hates me, and I've never said more than 3 sentences to her the years she's been here. Hate the Explorer program, and is crawling up my ass and the program. Chief won't sign off to move it to American Legion, and if she got a hold of the checking account, I'm pretty well fucked." In response, DJ, who had followed in his father's footsteps and joined the military, responded. Hopefully she decided to get a couple of drinks and gets a DUI. Joe responds by writing, "She does, but not around here, and no one knows where. Trust me, I've thought through many scenarios from planting things to the Volo bog, which contextually means he has planned to kill her because
Oh my
she asked for
God.
him to account for public funds that he was misappropriating." On a separate occasion, Joe outright stated that his son was also using the money from the Explorer account, writing, "You are borrowing from that quote-unquote other account. When you get back, you'll have to start dumping the money into that account, or you'll be visiting me in jail." It was also found that Chief Bayan, the man who had hand-waved all of Joe's transgressions throughout the years, might have also stolen money, or at the very least, had been aware that Joe was, as Joe texted him complaining about Anne and commiserating that his life was over because she wanted him to do inventory. Via Facebook messages that had likewise been recovered, it appeared that Joe wasn't just thinking about planting drugs on Marin and killing her himself. He was also thinking about putting a hit out on her. In one message, he alluded to contacting a known gang member in the area and asking him to take care of the problem. When this was found, the gang member was brought in with his lawyer and claimed he knew nothing about it, though many believe he was covering his own ass. To investigators, it had become clear as to what had happened, and all the nonsensical issues that they had found at the crime scene began to make sense. Knowing that Ann Marin was going to uncover that he had stolen upwards of $60,000 from the Police Explorer's post and ruin his reputation, he decided that he would die a hero's death. In his mind, looking into the misappropriated funds would be considered inappropriate if Marin were to continue her investigation after he was savagely killed, therefore alleviating any blowback on his family for their part and saving his good name. By making it appear he was murdered on the job, his family would have access to his pension and be supported by the police department, no questions asked.
Holy
the department would likely honor him as a fallen brother, and even if they were to discover that he had used the funds selfishly, they wouldn't let that tarnish his memory now that he was gone. Joe had spent a good portion of his career working for the Police Explorers and staging fake crime scenes for them, so he knew how to properly set a scene, or at least he knew how to make a scene look believable for children. He pretended to go about his day as usual, stopping for cigarettes before getting to the cement plant. He spent 30 minutes throwing his personal items around and trying to make it appear that he had been attacked by 3 individuals. He then radioed for help and shot himself once in the torso, breaking his phone, hopefully beyond repair, and knocking the wind out of himself. He then waited until he heard reinforcements arrive, then pulled his bulletproof vest away from his chest and shot himself. He dropped the gun, stumbled 3 feet, and then fell, dying before anyone could reach him. For Joe, being held accountable for his crimes was a burden too big for him to bear. He wanted to die a hero, and die the way he believed everyone else saw him. He thought, irrationally, that by dying, he would be saving his wife and eldest son from being implicated in his schemes. But, as we all know, that wasn't the case. Melody was indicted mere months after her interview with True Crime Daily for dispersing charitable funds without authority and for personal benefit, and 2 counts of money laundering. She pleaded not guilty to these charges, and stated that despite the text messages of her acknowledging that Joe and her had used funds from the Explorer's post,
Die a hero,
she had done
sure,
nothing
buddy.
wrong.
Yeah,
Likewise,
after
the
fucking
prosecution
like
also had a video of
raping
Melody that had
his
been taken shortly
coworkers,
after
his
her husband's death.
subordinates,
In it, she acknowledged knowing that they
and
were
being
using
like
funds from the
just a
Explorer
general
post
sex
to pay
pest
for vacations and other material goods,
and a
but
thief.
clarified it wasn't
Fucking
that bad,
cops,
seeing
man.
as she made sure that they
Jesus
always paid the money
Christ.
back. She was quoted as saying, "People want to go, that's embezzling funds. No, not when you pay it back. Every time he borrowed money, he'd let me know, and I'd write it down." However, directly after it was made public that the text messages between her and Joe would be allowed in court, Melody accepted a plea deal and was convicted of a deceptive practice, which is a Class 4 felony in Illinois. After taking the plea, Melody stood up in court and claims that she never took a penny and is innocent of all charges, but just pled guilty to put all this behind her.
Take full responsibility. And knowing at one point my husband was commingling his funds with the Explorer account. When my husband would ask me to write a check back to the account, I would do that.
I've never heard
The
faker
Explorer
crying in my
program
life.
was a central part of our lives. I came on so that the females that were in the program would be able to participate in competitions. I love the kids who came through the program as they were, and many still are, what I call my bonus kids. I enjoyed seeing them use the skills they had gained in the program in their adult lives, the things I would have wanted to sorry, sir. The last
Whatever,
thing
lady.
I would have wanted to see was the program that had enriched so many young lives. And
Not one tear yet again. I don't really count that as evidence of not crying because there's a lot of times that I'm writing the line. You know what I mean? Where you can hear my voice wavering, but I'm able to hold back. Tears are the last thing that happens. You know what I mean? So that doesn't really, but like this is acted. This is just bad acting, right?
I didn't know my husband was commingling his own money into the Explorer account until he asked me to write a check back into the account. And I never knew the full amount that he was commingling until after his death. In regard to the Hawaii trip,
I cry pretty
I
easy
didn't know my husband was planning a surprise honeymoon until I discovered it in April 2014. That he had deposited $7,000 into my account to use for the trip. When I asked my husband where the money came from, he told me he took a loan out on his retirement account through work. I didn't know the amount of the loan, and I didn't even know where he had deposited the loan to. But at some point after the trip, my husband asked me for an additional check to be written to the Explorer account to offset what was spent. Again,
Who would be crying while talking about transferring money between accounts?
And to protect those donations that were made to the program. The one and only time I ever personally made a transaction on the Explorer account.
Okay, Victoria V, have fun. Please show us pictures. I would love to see. I don't know what yarn under means. I have no idea what that means.
Who had passed away in a horrific car accident.
You're quicker to cry of happiness and sadness. Both of them make me cry really, really easy. Really, really easy.
Explorer was one of my son's closest friends. And the family had requested that my son be there to serve as part of the honor guard with the rest of the Explorer post, who did the same. I'd like to make it clear, I never took a cent from the Explorer Fund, no matter what has been recorded. Life since my husband's death and this prosecution has not only affected my life, but those of my children. All of us have been subjected to a litany of death threats. The media not only released our address and our phone number, but for good measure, they released my social security number and my driver's license number.
No, they fucking didn't, lady.
And a multitude of my accounts being breached. Further,
I don't believe that even remotely.
They decided they were going to cancel my credit card because for them, doing business with me was a reputational risk to their company. But they took it further.
Maybe you should have rethought the choices that shaped that reputation.
And then turned around and shut the savings accounts and checkings account down of all my children, preventing them from getting their funds from their direct deposit.
And then they kicked my puppy I just got. And they told me I was ugly and that I was stupid because I only speak one language.
And as hard as I tried, and I have filled out
The language is lies.
that I can count, I am still unable to obtain employment just because
Linies.
But I think the worst is probably the continual desecration of my husband's grave. There have been many times that we arrive and everything is broken and strewn about. But I think the worst was when I took my youngest son, and as we approached, yet again, everything was broken. And and then there was a knife stabbed into his grave.
Maybe he shouldn't have raped those ladies
All we can do is
and then killed himself to not have to face the music. Maybe that.
Perhaps people will disagree with how my husband managed finances, which is the crux of the matter here. And I will note there is a difference between malice and a lack of skill.
I just don't really believe her is a thing. Also that.
But please, let his final resting place be a place to bring peace to his family and loved ones. I ask your honor to consider all of this in your sentencing and to allow me to move.
She was recently sentenced to 24 months probation. As for his son, Donald, he wasn't charged with using the funds from the Explorer Fund, as there was apparently not enough evidence to do so. However, text messages went on to show that his father set up a sham marriage between Donald and Joe's own mistress so they could receive better benefits, and it appears as though DJ had been dishonorably discharged from the military.
What?
Joe was a terrible person who spent years abusing his post and taking advantage of others, all while being supported by the people around him. He was allowed to get away with almost everything his entire career, and the moment
This is
he
like
had to be accountable
depressing
for his own
Brooklyn
actions, he
Nine-Nine.
instead did what he did best and lied. Oddly enough, because Joe had been so revered in the press and in the town of Fox Lake, some people believe that Joe, Melody, and DJ were set up. They have created a conspiracy around this case, claiming that the media is withholding evidence and lying about who Joe was, as they knew him, and he wouldn't do what they said he would. However, 20 years of complaints, lawsuits, and physical evidence of his actions speak louder than their theories. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and thank you most of all to our subscriber, Jackie Marina, who suggested it. Again, if you have video suggestions and want to see us cover a case,
let's find a
please leave
new
it in the
one
comments
here.
below, or feel free to shoot us an email. If you have made it this
Or
far,
actually, you
please
know what?
like and subscribe,
Let's go ahead and
remember,
take
stay safe.
another quick break. We'll be back in 3 to 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Honor and shame. Most hindsight.
Yo, 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 yo. Big up respect. Give me 1 second here. And we will... Oh, shit. Give me just a moment, y'all. So sorry. Yeah, we have to do this one. We have to skip the Martin Bryant case for now. We'll do it tomorrow, or well, not tomorrow, Friday, I guess. Because this other one is too long, and this is going to be the last one of the night, etc., etc. Can I see? Sorry. Can I see 4 readies in chat, please? And thank you. I appreciate you. Oh, that's 1. That's 2. I just need 2 more. You have trained for this moment. All of your readies are stretched and warmed. That's disgusting. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be gross. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Just 1 more. Just 1 more, please. Do you guys like my fun updo today? I'm very excited about it. If I like cheer dancing Doxy, I'll do an extra special dance once we get our... Oh, there it is. Never mind. I didn't say it. I don't have to do it. Just kidding. I'll do it really quick. Hold on.
I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I am an expert and I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I am a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier. What I just read out is the Soldier's Creed, which is a sort of rallying cry most soldiers know. It is meant to be a distilled version of their core beliefs and remind them of the oath they took to not only serve their country, but the people therein it. From such a creed, you would think that the men and women saying it would be amongst the most honorable in the nation, never leaving a man behind and acting not in their own selfish interests, but the interest of their fellow soldiers. However, the accuracy of this creed is wanting, given the tremendous amount of corruption and cover-ups that happen within the military, one of which we are going to be talking about today. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, brought to you today by our patrons. Today we are going to be covering the case of Lavina Johnson, a woman whose death was mislabeled as being self-inflicted and how it was clearly a cover-up in an attempt to keep her from justice. Usually I try not to state something as incendiary as that at the beginning of the video, but as you will come to see in this case, that is more than justified. This video is suggested by Melcatsite, Twin Man, The Stock Watch Guru, Hope Gallows, and so many of our other subscribers on our video covering the Vanessa Guillen case, as it has to deal with more military incompetence and cover-ups, and I hope I am able to do Lavina justice today. I'm going to be leaving resources in the description box down below, along with the change.org petition to reopen the case, because simply talking about this has not yielded the appropriate results. I strongly implore you share any of the resources in the description of this video, or even the video itself, whether that be on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever social media you have, using the hashtag #JusticeForLavina. Pressure your local news station to talk about how this case is still being covered up, tweet it to your local congressman or woman, do what you can. It has been widely established that there was a cover-up in regards to this case. The fact that it hasn't been looked into past this is ridiculous. If something like this occurred today, it would be trending 100 times over. There would be a hefty investigation, and we would fight to get answers. I can say that with relative certainty, given what happened in the Vanessa Guillen case, which is alarmingly similar. We are not powerless in this case, and we haven't been for some time. This is a case where justice wasn't served, and will continue to not be served as long as people simply watch videos about this subject and move on with their lives. There are videos on this platform talking about this with 1 million views, and still nothing has been done. So let's try and change that. With all that said, let us begin. Lavina Johnson was someone who, in her short time on this earth, accomplished more than your average person. She was the kind of person who, when she set a goal, didn't sway from it until it was in her hands, at which point she would set a new one
like
and
that.
keep moving forward. If Lavina told you she was going to do something, chances were she was already on her way to accomplishing it, and doing so flawlessly. She was a determined, principled woman who knew what she wanted and didn't believe
now
in defeat.
anxiety.
Lavina was born July 27th, 1985.
Hey, that's my
to her
big sister's
parents,
birthday.
John and Linda Johnson. She was the couple's first girl and their fourth child altogether, and they knew from the moment she was born that they had struck gold. Lavina was just one of those kids who seemed to get everything immediately. She wasn't fussy or difficult, she never seemed to act out, and it seemed that she could put absolutely anyone under her spell. When she was just 4 months old, she was already winning awards and exceeding everyone's expectations, as the church her family attended gave her the Baby of the Year award, which her family boasted about. When she was just 4 years old, she began to sing in the church choir, and whenever she would be set to perform in any holiday pageant for her church or school, she would spend weeks preparing, putting in hours of her free time to make sure she did the best that she could. She shone bright in her community, never missing a mark or fumbling, and it seemed that she was just born to excel, which some did say was a bit frustrating. According to some of her peers, Lavina had a tendency to make others look bad by comparison, though they had a hard time holding that against her, given how gracious and kind she was. Lavina was just that type of person, who spent hours of her own time working for others' benefit. She took care of the people around her, including her young sisters, and there was nothing more important to her than uplifting the ones she loved by giving her all to see them succeed. Everyone knew that if you asked Lavina to do something, she would do it, and she would always do her best. Lavina's caring nature wasn't kept to just her family and friends, though. She also had a passion for animals and their well-being. When she was in the 5th grade, Lavina decided that she was going to, on her own accord, become a vegetarian. Not only that, she decided she was going to join People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, aka PETA. At just 11 years old, she began giving her own money to the organization, wanting to help them in their quest to stop animal abuse and make the world a friendlier place. When Lavina was in high school, she quickly garnered the reputation of being a dependable, good girl. She didn't feel the need to waste her time messing around the way most teenagers do. In fact, some of her teachers would go so far as to say she seemed to have matured past her peers and seemed to relate more to them than people her own age. She was known for the charity work she was constantly participating in, as well as her good grades, which landed her on the honor roll. At the same time,
this would have been
she began
96.
to realize what she
I don't
wanted to do
know
with her
when
life.
PETA
And as
became
usual,
terrible.
her
I
goals
just kind of
included supporting
assumed
the
they were
people
terrible
she
from
loved
the
most,
start.
her family. According to her father, Lavina wanted to attend a performing arts college with the hopes of becoming an established movie producer. She wanted to help put real stories onto the big screen, but more than that, she wanted to turn some of the books that her father had written into movies. She also wanted to create opportunities in the industry for her brothers John and Jermaine, and hoped that in time, when she was able to become a well-established producer, she would be able to get all of her music recognized and get the recognition it deserved.
Quinn, I don't know if you saw the last
entire
one, but
family
the
about
last
creating a
one
family-run production
makes it
company
hard
with
for
her
me to
brothers
believe
working in
any
music
of these
and her working in
fucking
movies and creating a solid
digital
foundation for themselves
obits.
together. That way they could all profit. But first, she would need to go to college. Her parents were supportive of her extending her education, and in fact, encouraged it, knowing that she was going to make
PETA
something
has
of
always been
herself in
terrible?
whatever field she
Interesting.
went into. They had saved up a hefty amount of money with her education in
But
mind,
it wasn't so
knowing
well
that she was
known.
going
Fair
to go
enough.
far. Lavina wanted to go to school in California, and that would mean out-of-state tuition. She also knew that her parents would be paying for her sister's college at around the same time, which would put a significant financial strain on the family. Always the considerate daughter, she began to look for ways to lessen their burden. It was through that Lavina stumbled upon the U.S. military and decided that she would join after high school. Her parents were not incredibly supportive of this decision, despite both of them having worked in the Army in some capacity. Neither thought that she should go into it herself, knowing that the environment wasn't great for young women. Her father, John, tried to get Lavina to reconsider, telling her that he didn't mind working harder to allow
you literally
her to pursue her
like
dreams, and that the burden wouldn't be as bad as she thought.
Legit
But she was
were just
persistent
like,
that
but once
this was
we
a
look through their
necessary
phone,
step to achieving her own dreams on her
which
own
is what they
terms,
did
and informed them
with
that she was
with the
simply
last
telling them
guy
her
is what they
decision and
did,
not
and that's
asking
how
for
they found
permission.
out that
A
he
year
was a
after
bad
graduating
guy
from Hazelwood
who
Senior
killed
High
himself
School
after
with
raping
honors,
those
Lavina was
ladies.
assigned to the
That's
129th
right.
Corps
That's right.
Support Battalion and deployed to serve a tour in Balad, Iraq. She had no idea that only 8 weeks after, she would be murdered 8 days before her 20th birthday, and the army that she served would try to cover up her death.
Is that better or worse than PETA, the army?
From the moment Lavina touched down in Iraq,
never
she was
been
in
a
near
choice
constant communication
for
with her parents. Unlike so
a
many
lot of the
soldiers who would
people
be
that
without the
join
ability
it.
to talk to their families for weeks or months at a time, Lavina worked in the communication center.
I
which
mean, like,
essentially
technically it's a
acted like an
choice, but the
internet
choice is
cafe.
that or
She
starve.
therefore had plenty
You know
of
what I
access
mean?
to various forms of communication, which she used to keep in near constant contact with her family. In fact, one of the things her friends and fellow soldiers knew about Lavina was that she came from an incredibly close-knit family who she adored. She called them often, relaying stories about her time there and what she was doing, and when she could, she also sent them letters. Lavina was clearly in good spirits, although she did begrudge the fact that other male soldiers looked down on her for her gender. This was, of course, not unique to Lavina, as the U.S. military has been shown to be an unwelcoming place to women, with 1 in 3 female soldiers reporting sexual abuse of some kind. Verbal belittlement and disrespect was seen as normal and expected. This kind of mocking and minimizing female soldiers came at a cost to Lavina. In one instance, while working at the communication center, she was closing up for the night and requested a small group of male soldiers to leave. She informed them that she needed to close the center and that they had to vacate the premises. But they laughed in her face, telling her they weren't going anywhere, and then pretended they couldn't hear her. She tried multiple times to get these men to leave, but they continued to ignore her, until finally, she had to get a male authority figure to do the same. The moment a male counterpart addressed them, the male who would refuse to listen or acknowledge Lavina immediately left without issue. Instead of reprimanding the male soldiers for not listening to her, respecting her position, or even just being courteous, Lavina was reprimanded and told that she needed to assert herself more. In essence, it was her fault she was being unfairly ignored and disrespected by her peers, because she didn't seem serious enough
the military is
and didn't command
such
respect.
garbage.
If she was tougher or carried herself in a more intimidating way, it would be better for her. Never mind the fact that Lavina had asserted herself, and they should have simply respected her position.
There is
because
a
of her
bunch,
job.
Reth.
Their
I
actions
remember.
were still placed on her. Lavina was a positive
When I was
and
that
strong-willed
age,
person,
like,
and
yeah.
thought that she would be able to tough it out quietly. In her mind, she believed that the majority of men
All the
who
way
were
up
treating
until
her
I was, like,
poorly were doing
30.
it because they thought less of her, and it was up to her to change their expectations. If she were to report their behavior or any of the transgressions that she experienced, she believed that that would make her look even worse, because it would show she was weaker than them. Her complaining at all about their actions would just show how she couldn't take a joke and needed special treatment, so she instead kept quiet, choosing to endure their disrespect with the hope that things would turn around as she showed them that she was valuable. But as we know, that isn't the case, and never is the case. After relaying this story to her family in a phone call, her father was furious. John, who again, experienced in the service as a doctor, knew that how Lavina was being treated wasn't right and would likely not change unless she did something about it. The disrespect that was being thrown her way, specifically by her superior, who had reprimanded her instead of the men around her, was likely going to get worse before it got any better. And he urged Lavina to get a battle buddy. A battle buddy is a person who acts as a kind of protection in the service. They're a fellow soldier who you spend 24 hours a day with, 7 days a week. The Battle Buddy system was created to develop a sense of responsibility and accountability with soldiers, and also reduce the likelihood of any misconduct, and more specifically, sexual misconduct, which was running rampant in the military. It was also meant as a system to lower the rate of suicides, which had likewise begun to be a problem. John wanted Lavina to get a battle buddy. That way, if she was taken down by another general, or if
Wow,
other
it's
male
so
soldiers
weird
continued
that as
to
the
harass
rapes
her,
go up,
she would
so
have a
do the
second party
suicides.
who could
That's
protect her and act as a witness.
Wow.
Lavina placated her father
knew?
and told him that things would be fine, but he stood firm, and told her if these things continued to occur, he would put in a request for her. He knew how these men's minds worked after being around them for a number of years, and he didn't trust that they would treat her right. Little did he know that his fears had already materialized. Unbeknownst to her father was the fact that at some point, before she had been disrespected in the communication center, Lavina had been raped by a fellow serviceman. The details of what happened are unclear, but what was known is that after she had been raped, she had gotten an STD and was currently getting treatment for that from the doctors on site. This should have led to there being reports taken and a full investigation into her claims. However, it appeared that the military had no records
Knew that
regarding
little
the
however
rape
was
or the
coming.
actions taken by their
And,
staff afterwards, meaning that it is
yikes,
likely that the man who
America.
did this wasn't reprimanded or penalized at all. Many speculate that while Lavina had wanted to put in a report herself, she was dissuaded by the people she told and made to feel as if it was her fault the rape had occurred. That said, it is also possible that reports regarding her assault were destroyed after her death. Lavina hadn't told anyone in her private life about the assault, and it seemed as though she was trying to move past it, which might be why she bristled at the idea of getting a battle buddy, as she felt like she didn't want to stir any more feathers after her assault, and wanted to try to go on as if nothing had happened. On July 17, 2005, Lavina called home around 7 a.m. and spoke with her parents. She was excited because she had just gotten word that she would be going home a lot sooner than she had expected, and she was going to be coming home around Christmas time, which was her favorite time of year, and she didn't want her family to start decorating without her. She was excited, making plans, and looking forward to the next couple of months. Before ending the call, her mom had asked if she wanted to speak to her siblings, who were still asleep. Lavina said no, and that she would call back in the next couple of days to catch up with them, and hung up. But that call would never come, because according to the military, 2 days later, she would take her own life. According to the military, the following is what happened on July 19th, 2005. This is the official sequence of events
1 week before her birthday.
CID and military
Like,
officials. Lavina had spent the day
a week
working
and a
in the
day.
communications office as normal. There had been no distressing or concerning incidents that had taken place that day, and Lavina was seen by multiple people, laughing and acting her usual self. She locked up the building after work and set out with an unnamed male friend to get some snacks for the military store. The man who walked with Lavina to the store and then to her barracks stated that she was in a good mood, making jokes about work and seeming in relatively high spirits. From there, she went back to her barracks to get ready for physical training with two of her other friends. Lavina had changed out of her regular clothes and into her physical training outfit, but instead of going to physical training and meeting up with her friends, she instead printed out emails from her short-term ex-boyfriend who had recently broken up with her, and got her military-issued M16 rifle and walked to a contractor's tent belonging to Kellogg Brown and Root. There she set the emails on fire using an aerosol can and then somehow shot herself with the M16, despite the fact that she was only 5'1", and wouldn't have been able to reach the trigger if it was placed against her head or in her mouth.
Sure,
Lavina
Jan.
had, according to the military, become incredibly distressed since her boyfriend had broken up with her, and wanted to end her life because of that. Even though the pair had only been dating for about 2 months, they stated that Lavina was in love with him and couldn't bear the rejection. The Army noted that she had begun eating a lot more ice cream in the weeks after the breakup,
Oh,
and that change of diet meant that she most
my
likely
God.
had fallen into a serious, life-threatening depression. She had also begun to smoke cigarettes, according to the other soldiers who were interviewed after her death. These two changes in her life, according to the official reports, were enough to show that Lavina had been in such a poor mental place that she decided to kill herself. But, as you will see, that could not be what actually occurred. A day or so after Lavina's death, her parents were informed, albeit vaguely. A uniformed soldier showed up at their doorstep and told them that their daughter was dead. The Johnsons were understandably devastated, but also confused. Lavina hadn't been in active combat and was in perfect health, and she had just called to say she would be back in time for Christmas. She made plans to call back and speak to her brothers and sister, and she had been genuinely excited for what the future had in store for her. There was no reasonable explanation, sans a third party taking her life, that would explain how she died. According to John and Linda, the soldier then let it slip that Lavina had ended her own life. When pressed for more about his statement, he then backtracked and said that he didn't mean to say that she had killed herself, and that Lavina's death was currently being investigated, and that they would be receiving a
See you
phone
later,
call
Henry. Have a
within the
good
next
one.
couple days with more
I
information.
am
But at
just
once,
blown
John
the
and
fuck
Linda knew that
away. A
something was
lot
wrong
more
about the
ice
situation.
cream.
When the call
And started
did come, the
smoking
information they
cigarettes.
received made little to no sense. John had experience in the Army and knew his daughter, so when they told him that she had shot herself in the head with an M16 rifle, he knew that couldn't have happened. She wouldn't have been able to reach the trigger, given her short stature. The gunshot was also on the left side of her head, and Lavina was right-handed, meaning it was unlikely that she had shot herself. Not only that, but when they were given the results of the autopsy, it showed that Lavina had not fired the weapon that killed her, as there was no gunshot residue on either of her hands or any part of her body. Had she shot herself with an M16, there would have been gunshot residue on her, but according to their own evidence, there was none. When he brought up his concerns, the representative for the Army tried to placate him, saying that she had somehow managed to kill herself in the way they had stated, even if it made no sense. The representative likewise informed him that they would be sending the body back for burial, and that it would be better for the family to do a closed casket, as Lavina's body was in poor condition. They tried in earnest to pressure the family not to look at Lavina's body, but the Johnsons didn't listen and felt compelled to see their daughter one last time before the burial.
I feel like everybody would do that.
Seeing their daughter would then lead to them making some of the most critical discoveries in this case. Despite the Army stating her body would be too traumatizing to see, she wasn't as brutalized as they had said. It was clear that Lavina had gone through a tremendous amount of physical trauma before she died, but the injuries she had sustained didn't make sense if she had killed herself. Instead, it appeared as if Lavina had been badly beaten before her passing. Her face was bruised, her lip was busted, multiple of her teeth had been broken and loose, as if she had been struck in the face. She had scratch marks on her neck, and it appeared as if she had broken her nose before she died, but the military reset it to try to conceal the injury. The bullet wound was on the left side of her head, despite her being right-handed, and appeared to be too small to have been caused by an M16. In fact, reports would go on to say that it appeared to be a gunshot from a small handgun, not Lavina's military-issued rifle. But there was something even more alarming about Lavina's body, and that was the fact that the military had decided to glue her white dress gloves to her hands, preventing them from being seen by anyone. John and his wife tried to get the gloves off at one point, but were disturbed to find them adhered to their daughter's body. They asked the funeral parlor about the action, and they were informed that she had the gloves on when they gathered her body from the military. It was later found that her hands had third-degree burns on them, and the gloves had been placed on them to conceal that fact. John would later go on to posit that the gloves were placed there to eliminate and destroy any further evidence that could have been left on Lavina's body, and to further consolidate the lies the military had been telling them. John and Linda knew something was wrong from the moment they were told that Lavina had killed herself. Even if she had been upset about her ex-boyfriend, she had never made mention of it to anyone around her.
Yeah, when I did, it was
concerned for her
glorious.
Emotional well-being. They asked her friends in the Army about her actions prior to her death, and one friend stated that while Lavina loved her ex and was sad that they had broken up, she wasn't too upset about it, quoting her saying, "She knew that they would get back together the moment she got back home, and it was just a distance thing. So Lavina deciding to end her life over this made no sense." What also struck the Johnsons as odd was that the Army seemed insistent that her death had absolutely nothing to do with the sexual assault she had faced while deployed. Though she had not spoken to her family or peers about it, Lavina's sexual assault had taken a toll on her, as most assaults do. Lavina had to get treatment for the still unknown STD she had contracted, and given the lack of follow-up or reporting, whatever she did claim to the doctors hadn't been pursued, meaning the man who had assaulted her wasn't penalized. It seemed that whenever the Johnsons talked about the assault on their daughter, or inquired more into what had occurred, the Army would become unresponsive, and try to tell them that Lavina wasn't upset about what had happened in that instance, that it had been no big deal and she had moved on from it, so they should as well. But John didn't let up though, and inquired as to if the man who had assaulted his daughter could have had anything to do with her death. He was then told that they had looked into it, and ruled him out entirely. But also, they didn't know who had originally assaulted her anyways, so any follow-up would be fruitless. John then inquired.
You can't give both of those answers
during her autopsy, to which
you
the
can't
military
say
said
both
there
of those
hadn't been,
things,
as there had been no reason to have done so because Lavina had clearly killed herself. But when John brought up the
we don't know who it is, and also he
sexually
didn't do it,
and her being killed, and how it should have been standard operating procedure to run one, the Army relayed to him that if he wanted any more information, he would have to go through their legal representatives, cutting him off entirely. At that point, both John and Linda were tired, heartbroken, and distraught. Going against the United States Army was no small task, and hiring their own legal counsel to investigate what was going on was something that seemed daunting and impossible. But after talking it over with each other, they realized that there was simply nothing else they could do. Lavina deserved to get justice, and so they began their crusade to get her name and case in front of as many people as possible. John began going on to different shows, writing news stations, and talking about his daughter's death to the public. And almost at once, people stopped and took notice. Nothing about what the military had said made sense. And the more people who heard about it, the angrier people became. More men and women began coming forward, talking about how their daughters had likewise died under suspicious circumstances.
Right, Reth? That's
And
exactly
how it had been
it.
written off as a suicide without much investigation. This was not a one-time thing, and John speaking up gave others the courage to do so as well. As John continued to speak to the media, the U.S. Army responded, hoping to quell the outcry against them, and they released a 315-page file containing all the notes on the investigation on her death. But things would only get more confusing from there. Because of the insistence of the Johnson family and their refusal to accept that their daughter had killed herself, the military was forced to release the investigative documents surrounding the case. It appeared that they believed that the release of these documents would lead to people agreeing that Lavina had killed herself, and there hadn't been a cover-up. However, the exact opposite is true, given how little of the evidence makes sense with the story they put forward. According to the document, after Lavina had shot herself, multiple people responded and found Lavina dead, and portions of the contractor's tent on fire. But the stories given about how Lavina was found don't exactly match up. According to the documents, the first two people to find Lavina stated that they found her dead, under a bench that was in the tent, meaning that she had shot herself standing, fallen, then somehow slid under the bench on her own accord, which, given how instantaneous a shot to the head is at killing someone, isn't possible. Or she had laid herself down under the bench, then shot herself. Or a third party had moved the bench over her after dying. A third person who arrived on the scene shortly thereafter stated that when he saw Lavina, she was on the ground, not under a bench, and the M16 was lying across her body. He also stated that parts of her body were smoking and slightly on fire, which is a huge detail that the first two witnesses didn't notice. Who had set parts of her body on fire? How had the previous two missed that her body was smoking? And why did they not see the rifle on top of her? A fourth person arrived after being called to provide aid, as they were a doctor. They didn't note that Lavina was on fire or smoking, and stated that her rifle was cradled over her left shoulder, not directly across her body as previously noted. He then moved the rifle in order to check for signs of life, to which he said there were none. 3 other men, likewise, reported that when they found Lavina around the same time as the doctor, she was lying face up, with her right arm covering her face, and the rifle not stretched out over her body or cradled over her left shoulder, but on her left wrist. She likewise was not on fire or under a bench. However, in photos, the rifle would be shown to be a couple feet away from her body, completely removed from her person. Another party discussed how a civilian had flagged him down as he was driving by and informed him of a fire in a dead body in the contractor's tent. He described seeing flames near the tent that Lavina was in, and the 2 soldiers had carried a burning bench outside of the tent and were trying to put out the flames. He then
What do you awful women want?
Spice Zero Fly hosting with 3 viewers.
The various
Spice of
statements that were
life.
given seemed
Thank you so
similar
much
enough to
for
the
the
military,
raid.
but the key
I
notable
appreciate
differences raised
you.
red flags
Hello,
to those
Yorba.
reading them and when they were released. Why is it that no one who found her that night could recall if she was on fire
I
or
am
not?
Zero
And
Doxy.
how
I'm
are
a
there so
garbage
many
monster.
discrepancies about that? How did her
We're
body get out from under the bench if she had shot herself
listening
and fallen
to
straight down?
true crime?
Was the bench on fire when they found it? And how did she get under the flaming bench? Where was
And
the
we're
gun when
crocheting a
people
beautiful
originally
top. If you have any
arrived? On her
questions, if
body,
you want to
in her
see
arms,
what the
or
top will look
elsewhere?
like
How many
finished,
people
just do
moved
an
the gun
exclamation
before it was
point
photographed?
pattern in chat,
The
and that'll
document went
show
on to
you.
showcase
And it'll
various
take you
interviews
to the
with her
pattern,
friends and
which is
colleagues.
free.
The vast majority
in
of
case you
statements
crochet and
said
want
she
to
was
make
as
it too.
chipper and bright as ever. People who stated she was around every day talked about how continuously upbeat
What'd you
and
guys
peppy she
do?
was, and how excited she was to potentially go home for the holidays. A separate account from another trusted friend noted that she had in fact made jokes about suicide, but they were clearly jokes and never serious, always made in a hyperbolic manner. All except one statement seemed to agree that Lavina was a bright woman who wouldn't have purposely injured herself in such a heinous way. However, that lone statement contradicts itself and stands out as being incredibly odd and suspicious. The name of the person who gave the statement has been redacted, so we will just refer to them by their pronouns, she and her. She stated that she knew Lavina since they were in deployment classes at Fort Campbell. She stated last month that Lavina found out she had an STD from a sexual assault. She then stated that during the last week of her life, Lavina changed her eating habits, gave her some of her possessions, and began smoking. During the past month, Lavina had stated several times that she hated her and wished she was dead. This was really the only account that validated the very idea that Lavina would want to hurt herself, and it went against a lot of other accounts of how she was. Though it is feasible that Lavina only acted in this certain manner around this one person, others who were closer to her in the unit, who spoke to her family, denied a lot of these claims, and stated that when Lavina would say she was going to kill herself as a joke, she would do so when she would stub her toe or messed up in some small way, and it was abundantly clear that she was joking. They went on to say that Lavina hadn't changed her eating habits in any extreme way. It was because they were in the desert in an extreme heat. Regardless, it seemed as if the military had gotten this lone statement and decided that it was
we're pretty close to calling it here.
The report then
but
went on
we
to
are going to
state that the
finish
lack of
this
gunshot residue
video.
wasn't necessarily
I
an
can
issue
show
and
you
didn't prove that she didn't shoot herself. The entire document did little to comfort the Johnsons, or make it appear that Lavina had somehow done this to herself. In fact, it appeared to discredit itself multiple times over, making those who read it more suspicious of the people who were trying to push the narrative that she would have hurt herself when there were so many people who loved her
big
who were
for
stating
I
otherwise.
wouldn't be
While the
able
majority
to
of it was
wear it,
unhelpful,
but
it only seemed to add to the
it's going to go into my
Johnsons'
shop. It'll
frustrations.
be
There
like
was
about a
something in
size
it that piqued their
large.
interest.
We're
Amongst
just
poorly
beginning
scanned
the
photos of
skirt
the
at the
gun
bottom.
in the tent where
It's
Lavina
going to be
died, someone
what
had
this
scanned
white
in the
stuff
CD
is,
ROM,
only like
stating
really
that it
long.
had contents that were pertinent to the case.
If you
Although
do
what exactly was on
exclamation
it was
pattern,
unknown. John
it'll show
immediately
you.
knew that whatever was in the case was vitally important, and he put in another Freedom of Information Act request
Thank you so
on
much
it,
for the
saying
raid.
that he was entitled to all the information revolving around her death. The military denied this request and told him that the CD contained private parties' information, but John continued to persist, once again getting the media and politicians involved. In order to get the CD, the Johnsons reached out to Senator Lacy Clay and spoke to him about the case. Publicly, Clay asked the military to hand over the CD, and when they refused, he went around them and was able to procure it anyways. And lo and behold, the contents of the CD further proved that what had happened to Lavina could not have been suicide. The CD contained full-color photos of her body at the crime scene, how it had been positioned, and where everything was when she was found. There were also photos of her prior to her autopsy, photos of her naked body and the trauma that had been inflicted upon her, and it went well beyond a shot to the head. Lavina had bruises and scratches all up and down her torso, which the military could not explain. It also appeared that there were bite marks on her, and teeth marks were physically present. Her elbow had been popped out of place and fully dislocated. The back of her clothes were covered in dirt and debris, as if she had been dragged a long distance prior to her death. Strangely though, it appeared that someone had deliberately tried to set her naked body on fire, as her back had been charred, but had redressed her afterward and dragged her body a short distance. Her lower stomach had been beaten so badly that it was entirely
crochet
bruised
on top
and
of
blackened.
first cluster.
The injuries that she sustained to her body in no way matched a simple suicide, and it seemed obvious that she had been brutally beaten before her death, most likely by more than one party. Someone or a group of people had bitten her, kicked her, and set her alight and dragged her, and there was no way she had caused this damage to herself. But unfortunately,
Yes, bite marks. That
the photos
immediately
that were taken of Lavina's
says
naked body at her autopsy showed
men
that
in the
caustic
military to
substance
me.
that Dr. Johnson
Fucking
believed
children.
to be lye was poured into her vagina, most likely to eliminate any
Holy
DNA
shit.
evidence that could have been tied to a rape. As a reminder, the military coroner had stated that they hadn't done a rape kit on
Chain
Lavina
4.
or done
1,
any examination of her
2,
sexual organs after her
3,
death, because in their
4.
words, there was no reason to think that anything involving
Single
this
crochet
crime
in
had been
in
sexual,
between
even
second
though
and
he was
third
the one who
cluster.
had taken the photos showcasing how her vagina had been corroded with some sort of acid. But sure, there was no reason to think she had suffered any sexual trauma despite there being acid on her sexual organs. There were also pictures of blood
And then
outside of
chain
the tent,
4.
as if she had been moved multiple times, or beaten outside and then dragged into the tent to be killed. The photos made no sense, and the more evidence that they were given access to,
Okay,
the more questions
easy.
the Johnsons had. John went to the media once more, and using the intrigue the case garnered, they were able to afford to have a second autopsy done on Lavina. and even more was found. The second autopsy was able to show that Lavina had her neck broken and that prior to her death, parts of her vagina, tongue, and anus had been removed. The first autopsy and the medical examiner who conducted it never mentioned any of that, and likewise stated that he hadn't removed parts of her body, which again leads many to believe that she had in fact been brutally sexually tortured prior to her death. John worked with multiple media outlets to try and get this information in front of more people. But oddly enough, two major corporations who were interested in running stories on this case pulled out at the last second without explanation. It is widely believed that they pulled out because the U.S. Army ran ads on their networks. John worked hard to keep the story in the news to try to get answers and justice for his daughter. But as time has gone on, fewer people have paid attention, and most have just accepted Lavina's death as being part of a cover-up.
That's disgusting. I'm pissed.
Despite all the evidence that has been found through the second autopsy and other criminal analysts, the military has still refused to reopen the case and look at it with fresh eyes. They stated that the evidence speaks for itself, and that their biggest downfall in regards to Lavina came down to miscommunication between them and her family. But that cannot be the case. So much of their own evidence disproves their own theory as to what happened. Why did Lavina have bite marks on her upper torso? Why did it appear that she'd been brutally beaten before her death? Who poured corrosive acid on her vagina? Why were parts of her tongue, vagina, and anus cut prior to her death?
I would
Why
like
wasn't
to
a
know all
rape
the
kit done
answers
when her
to these.
vagina had clear signs of trauma? Who sexually abused her? And why is it that only one person purported that she was suicidal? These are some of the questions that still remain, that the military refuses to acknowledge. In their public statements surrounding Lavina, they try to ignore their own evidence, showing that what they are saying cannot be true, and it's time for that to stop. Lavina was killed July 2005. It is currently May 2022. 17 years have passed without justice. Normally on this channel, our videos allow for passive consumption of information. With the length and nature of what we post here, I never expect people to want to take action from what we are talking about. While we ask you to share the video if you like the content and engage with it if you want, we never have a call to arms or a rallying cry. However, that is not the case today.
I'm going to actually undo this, and we will pick it up from the beginning of this row.
The military has refused to reopen the case and look at it for what it is.
Friday.
And her family
I don't
still
know
has to deal
whether
with the absolute
Josiah
disrespect
is
that
going
this
to be
entails.
painting
Most
this
who have
week
looked
or
into
not,
this case,
so I
politicians,
don't know yet
former
whether it's going to
military,
be an
and more,
early
all agree that
stream.
something happened here and it properly wasn't investigated.
But
in
I
order
will
to protect
stream
the
on
person
Friday,
or people
unless
who committed the crime,
something
but they
extraneous
refuse to
happens.
move forward past that. However, we are not powerless. With the dawn of social media, cover-ups like this one can be called out and brought to light, and we can utilize shame to make a positive forward motion. The shame and attention that was used to force Fort Hood into looking into the Vanessa Guillen case needs to be used now. Please click the link in the description and go sign the change.org petition to reopen Lavina's case. Tweet out using hashtag Justice for Lavina and tweet to your local news station, your local political leaders, and people you know who can make a difference. The more attention we can get to this case, the more shame we can bring to the people who refuse to reopen the investigation, the more likely we are to actually figuring out what happened to Lavina and the public can know who killed her. Lavina was murdered in 2005, and it's been 17 years. She deserves to be at peace. Thank you for watching this video. If you have a case suggestion or want me to look into something for you, feel free to leave a comment or email me.
I'm mad. I'm mad that ending on that one I feel like was a bad idea. It really pissed me off. It just made me so upset. But anyway, on a lighter note, I guess we will. Tomorrow I'm gonna take the day to do behind the scenes stuff, so you won't see me. I will probably hang out on Discord for a little bit, so you could probably chat to me in my Discord if you're there during the afternoon, evening time. What else? Please join the Discord if you haven't already. And you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/ZER0DOXY. Obviously, you have found my Twitch. Please feel free to drop a follow if you haven't and this kind of stuff interests you, or you had a good time here. If you have a Prime sub laying around that you're not using, that you can't think of a better home for, we sure would love to take it off your hands. I would love it if you would take a look at my Patreon. There's no real rewards for it yet, but I am slowly working on things that will be happening with Patreon. So if you're not into supporting just to support, then the Patreon is not for you, and that's a-okay. I still value you just for being here. Thank you for coming and watching. With that being said, I would really like to thank my patrons. But Patreon is just like not working. It just isn't loading for me. It just won't load in. But I know we've got Laura Cody, Katie Bailey, Big Wolf Paws, and Quinn Kenobi. Thank you all so much. If there were any new ones throughout this stream or since the last time I read them out, I'm sorry. Patreon is not loading. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. We might switch on over to Kofi. I don't know how to pronounce that at some point. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I would love it very much if I could, you know what? No, go raid whoever you want. Raid whoever you want. Nobody that I know was streaming last time I looked, which was last time we had a break, which was only like half an hour. So go have a good time. I will see you on Friday. Goodbye.